Good evening, everyone. Tonight is March 6th, 2019. This is the Hatfield Planning Board monthly meeting. We have one public hearing tonight. But before we get to that, we have public forum. And I understand that there's someone that wants to speak during the public forum. Aaron? Okay. Actually, Aaron, did you sign in on the clipboard? Okay, sure.
Here representing Princess Holcutt's estate, and this is the best I could. So, handling this estate, and what we're looking for is to possibly do a A&R for this property. So the first page shows basically the layout of the property. The house is right here on the first set of little things, and then obviously there's property that goes all the way back. It's just like in short of 4 acres. The second page shows how we want to kind of square off and break the house apart from the open land. That little, I did my best, so this is, and then the third photo, which will show that we're gonna just basically make the rest of the square almost coming from Sam Shea's property to the back, and then there's a fence that's 10 North Street, the little ranch, that we're gonna just go about 16 feet towards in that fence. We're not gonna make it even because there's not enough room on the side of the garage if we do that. And then the last page shows 8 North King Street, and it shows how we're gonna go 16 feet. The fence is right on the property line. And so going back to the first page, you're gonna see there is a curb cut, and I guess it would be 12 North Street. So there's about 70 feet of property that's right there, which would be another entrance into the empty land after we break the house up.
So this would not be approval not required.
Sorry.
A&R is approval not required.
Okay, yeah, I guess that's what I was told to ask. I'm kind of really not sure what to do right now. I just was told to bring my, the best I could do, tell what we'd like to do, and then see.
Yeah, because the house right now, hard for me to tell, is that, you know how much road frontage there is for the house? Is that what that distance is? Is it 85 feet?
I would guess, I don't know that, I'm not gonna.
Yeah, because see here.
Because it goes pretty far, I mean, because it's hard to tell, but I think there's.
See, right here, there's a number here,
Yeah,
and that number is a distance.
okay, so.
Yeah. And so it's hard to tell what that is, but, you know.
But the frontage won't change whether we do this or not.
The frontage won't change there.
It says 85 on the last sheet.
Yeah, that's what I thought, the
Yeah, okay.
85. And then,
Because the house to the left definitely has less.
and then this frontage here is not enough for a lot. If you wanted to get back into here, are you thinking that you might at some point do something with the property in the back?
That's maybe if you're interested in buying that piece of property.
So
They
this
would have
is,
to probably put some kind of a road in because it's not enough frontage for an actual house.
so they'd have to do a subdivision.
Right, and then do like a circle or something to give them enough frontage
Right.
back there.
Right. So then the question would be whether or not we would consider that would be a pre-existing the house would be a pre-existing non-conforming use. So
Right.
you'd do a subdivision of that, but then what's that distance, that other little bit there is?
The one to the left,
Yeah.
that's about 70, I think we said.
You're gonna need at least 50, yeah. there's
Yeah, it
some-
looks like 70 here.
Yeah,
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 that
I
last.
think you're gonna get at least 50 feet.
Yeah.
In order to consider
Yeah, that's what I was told.
a subdivision.
Right,
to it.
right.
So you're gonna have to have somebody, actually survey all this.
So I did have the property surveyed, so I can go back to them and then
Yeah.
have them like officially make these little things that I made.
Yeah, yes, I think that's
Okay.
what you're gonna need to do.
Okay.
Yeah. Because you're gonna want us, because what you wanna do is, you're gonna subdivide off this lot, right?
Mhm.
And how much acreage is gonna be with that lot? You're right, this is,
It's a pretty big, I mean, maybe one, I
this
don't
is
know.
on North Street, so this
Correct.
is acre zoning here, so it's
Okay.
45,000 square feet.
Okay, I can find that out. I don't
Yeah.
know how to do
So you're gonna wanna have, you
it.
know,
At least 5,000 feet for the house,
45,000
45,000,
square feet.
Okay.
The lot size,
okay,
because the lot is so big,
yeah.
where
Well, I mean, we can do that, I mean, that's not,
the parcel is so big that,
we just kind of marked it out, we weren't sure.
Yeah.
So, okay. And then can you just kind of help me out, what do I need to do?
well, then I think you should check it with Wilma, because you're gonna need to actually probably, I mean, that would be a subdivision.
Yeah, which I
Just
just
that,
did, and that's,
Yeah.
you know, she just told me to do this, I talked to her
um,
yesterday,
Yeah,
she told me to do this.
yeah, but I think you're gonna want to actually do a full-blown application, and actually subdivide that off.
Okay.
So we can do the,
So for the bigger piece,
well, the bigger piece you're gonna sell, and then that, right, you want to sell that? And
Yeah.
so it'd be up to those folks to, they probably wanna come in and talk to us, make sure that they'd be able to get back in there and do what they want to do.
so hypothetically, if I make,
Because there's not enough frontage there for them to just,
say it's a big deal, well, yeah, they can't, they have to put some kind of road in.
they have to put it in a
Yeah,
subdivision road.
yeah, okay, and then, but if we came up with the 45,000 on the house piece, you foresee any reason why it wouldn't go fit?
I don't think so. It'd be-
I'm really nervous about the front. I mean, there isn't enough for anything real. Okay, this is all older stuff that was done years ago. And once you start to monkey with that, you gotta go by the rules of today. So now you're talking 200 feet of frontage.
Yeah, but the road would be, not the frontage, I mean, if we put a road in, the frontage is gonna be in the back.
All right, well, let's look at number one here, just the house and the lot.
Yep,
If you take that out,
Yeah.
you have to have 200 feet of frontage to get that out. Okay? So you can't put the road in here at 75 feet, because you haven't got 200 feet to get the first one. You're really gonna have to do some monkeying with the,
but then somebody said something like kind of circle, and go in and then,
No, they had enough.
they had enough to play out, they had enough to do all.
okay.
Yeah, they had enough frontage.
Because once we get back there, you know, once we get in, you're gonna have, it will be.
Yeah, it's not the getting back there, it's the
Yeah.
frontage that's gonna.
So I thought Bob just said
Yeah.
50 feet,
Right, well, right now you have a pre-existing non-conforming lot, which is
One,
the house, old house.
the old house,
Yeah.
but if you carve that off, right, then it's, I mean, right now, that lot is the entire
but the pre-existing non-conforming lot is the whole.
What's the whole thing?
It's the whole.
thing.
It's
Yeah.
not the one little one, you carve that out, it's the whole.
Once you carve that
You
out.
haven't got the whole in anywhere.
Yeah,
So if you carve out, so if you separate the house from the rest of the parcel, then there's enough frontage, is that what you're saying?
So we have to come in and build it.
Right.
So we could
Put a
come in
road here.
and then make a road, and then
Yeah.
this is the frontage in this area.
Mhm.
So it's pretty big.
I'd really like to see the survey on
yeah, I think you're gonna need, this isn't something we can just,
Okay, I was just told
it.
to
It's
do
not
that,
just
so,
an A&R thing. You
Yeah,
have
it's
to-
not.
Okay.
it'd be much more than that, Anna. But it's
okay,
not-
yeah, I don't,
I don't know if it's can be done, but there's some question as to whether it can.
is it possible? I mean, because otherwise we gotta make another move here.
it's, the pre-existing non-conforming lot is the way it sits right now.
Mhm.
The whole, though, the whole,
thing.
the whole, not just John's house, right? The whole parcel is pre-existing non-conforming due to the front,
Right,
okay?
so they used to have, where the little house is, where it's 10 North Street, that used to be all that used to be all the same property, and then they broke that off to put that little house. It all used to
That's
be-
where Mr. and Mrs. Cahill was, right?
They owned that, but yeah, so that used to be part,
Yeah,
Of the
but
whole
that's back in the
homestead.
good old days when you could get
Yeah,
away
yeah.
with
Yeah, I mean, if
65
you were to own that house and tear it down and then rebuild it,
yeah,
you
well,
could
that's,
reposition it, but,
we're getting the house.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Yeah.
should I pursue this with the architect or the surveyor?
it's not gonna be easy.
It's at best difficult.
Mhm.
Okay,
I mean, it looks nice to draw it and just say, this is
well, that's
it.
what I was told to do, so.
But yeah, but
Yeah.
it's the frontage that kills it.
Okay,
There's no way to get in on another parcel. What's the best house
I
out
think
there?
there's another, we have another right of way, is that correct? There's another like easement somewhere down the street? Okay, but I'm not sure exactly where that is, but it's just an easement, it's not a right of way.
Yeah, okay.
That goes out to, I don't even know where it is, so,
Do you have a survey that was done recently?
yeah, I just had Eaton do it.
Pardon?
Harold Eaton did one, because we didn't know where the boundary, so we,
Oh, he just did a survey of the parcel.
the whole land, the whole property.
Not the idea that you.
No, we didn't know what to do, so I
Yeah.
did, so I should have him, is it worth doing it though, that's my question. If somebody wanted to come in, put the road going in and then bear a left to get, so they made an L, and then there'd be plenty of then it'd be plenty of frontage along, going the same direction as North Street.
What? Hello? I didn't get that.
So you're gonna come in that little space, well, the 70 feet, we'll put a road, and then you can go left and put a, make an L for the street, and then you'd have plenty of frontage if you're gonna put that house in that lot,
All right,
if there was gonna be a house.
well, the other thing is, if they put in a subdivision road, they could get 200 feet of bulk of the subdivision road. So we have to-
That's a weird thing. Yeah, that would have to be definitely subdivision road, you're gonna have to get the frontage for the subdivision road,
Right,
that's what we're thinking.
yeah,
But then you do the second. No, 200 feet. Oh, I see, you're getting it off of this, I see, yeah.
yeah, so. Well, yeah, I mean, you could do, if you move, well, there's a couple things you could do in terms of moving the house, or even taking the house down. You wanna sell the house
Yeah,
out
so we
separately.
have somebody here that wants to buy the house,
So,
but it's just,
so if you wanna subdivide off the house,
Mhm.
I think the only way that you could do it is to subdivide it off of the subdivision road that you build in, and take your 200 feet of frontage off of the new road.
yeah, that's kind of what I was just saying, right?
And you know what that dimension is of the part that you're
Yeah.
calling the new road?
Well,
Frontage?
It's 80, 70.
well, that's going in, that's the part going in, but the long part would be
No,
the
I mean,
frontage.
just going in off the road.
It's 70.
Yeah, it's 70 that runs along North Street.
Okay.
And it's already, it's already curb cut, there's no,
Yeah, so, yeah, no, originally you were asking if you could just subdivide off this.
Yeah, that would be-
And that would be a lot, and then you come in here, but what you really need to do is have 200 feet of frontage back here off of this,
That would be off of subdivision.
off the subdivision.
so this would have to be 200 feet here
For the house,
for the full,
for the old house, if you want to subdivide that off.
even though it's not the front
Well, it has a new front now, it actually is gonna
side, okay.
Yeah.
All right, well, I mean, that's doable.
that would be the only way I think you
I
can.
mean, that's not a problem. I mean,
Yeah.
technically, you could probably go all the way if you really wanted to, and just do it out.
Well, it'd be along the road, 200 feet along the road. Not 200 feet, it's gotta be 200 feet of frontage on the road,
On that subdivision.
on the
road.
subdivision road. Not
Okay,
two-
yeah, that's,
Yeah.
okay.
Have Randy drop that on there, just for the fun of it, I don't know what he's gonna charge you to do that, but Randy at Docky.
Mhm. Yeah, he's the one that went out and did the other, found the pins down towards the stream, because we didn't know where
Yeah,
the
have
pins
him
were.
drop that in there and see what we got to look at there.
So he would know these things.
Oh, yeah, Randy would.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, he would know definitely.
Okay, thank you. Okay.
Okay,
He's the guy to give you the answer on that,
Okay, great.
okay?
Thank you very much.
okay. All right, sorry for the delay. We're gonna open up the hearing, we'll actually continue the public hearing from our previous meeting on clean focus renewables, continued from February 6th. We'll open the meeting here. I'll ask for the applicant or their representative to describe the project or any additions or amendments that have been made since February 6th, and we had some questions from our last meeting. And then I'll entertain any comments from supporters of the project And any questions would be made through the chair. And then comments from any opponents of the project. Again, questions will be entertained through the chair. The board at any time will be able to ask the applicant, supporters, or opponents any questions as necessary. And then at such point, we will close the public hearing. The board will deliberate, again, during which time we may ask questions of the applicant, supporters, or opponents. And then upon their deliberations, I'll seek a motion from the board to either approve the project with or without conditions, reject the project, or continue the hearing at a future date for the instructions to the applicant. I will note that Paul Bosco is not present tonight and will not be available for tonight's hearing. We have Paul Labby with us, Michael Poshak, and Steph Switch. Zach, do you want to update us on the project? Last time you were here, we had questions of you on the natural heritage priority area, the Conservation Commission and their decisions relative to this, and then also that particular schematic, I believe, was a surprise to you in that it was close to the southern edge of the property and had some shading associated with it.
Yeah, so we actually have a little more of a structured agenda tonight that we'd like to run through. We'll go through it as quickly as possible. And our aim is to address what we talked about last time, as well as the memo that you guys are in receipt of today. Yeah, so as you know, I'm Zach Sawicki with Clean Focus and Green Skies. Good to see you all again. And I'm here with two of my...
Is there a chance to put one of those up on there? I don't know if it'll work because it's not on a particle board, but not on a particle board. But
We'll make it work.
yeah, that would work. That way, right?
Perfect. It's an okay angle for you guys.
Yeah, that's fine. And if you could, can you just, if he turns the microphone here, will that work? Yeah, just turn that microphone and bring it over to you. That would be great.
Great. So, yeah, as I was saying, I'm Zach,
Yeah.
and I'm here with my two colleagues.
Hi, Dina Wolfman, with Zach in the development group. And you don't know me, so just a quick background, 20+ years in the environmental consulting, land use planning, environmental impact assessment, and environmental law fields.
And my name is Chris. I'm the GIS specialist for Green Skies. I handle all the site analysis and anything related to environmental science. My background is in environmental impact assessment.
Okay.
And I was here the very first time we introduced the project.
I thought you were familiar. Okay.
Cool. So I have a lot of information to share with you guys tonight, so I'll start handing that out. The first one is the revised decommissioning estimate that we talked about last time. It includes both a narrative and an actual estimate, including formulas. The next item I want to hand out is our application package. I put it back together. I know we've been here many times, so your notes are probably a lot of work. So here's another application package. We have updated 11 by 17s and full-size sets with us. I don't know. Bear with me. It's gonna help me go through that. So what we're passing out now is an example of, we're proposing 2 separate seed mixes on site, which I'll point out when we go into the site plan. So we've got a conservation seed mix and what we're calling an array seed mix, both different species with different purposes. There's a conservation mix.
And this corresponds to the landscape plan.
Next up, we've got some information on our screening. Last time we talked about the offset in the default cypress, and the 100-foot setback from Main Street. So passing out some information on that, and per your guys' suggestion, we had a graphic designer do a rendering of what the screening might look like when you're driving down Main Street. And that is everything I've got to hand out right now. So
Come on, Jack.
I can find more if you want.
You're hardly enough.
Okay, so yeah, just a general overview for you guys again. 0 Main Street with
If you could work to that and work over there, that way the audience can see where you're talking.
Cool. Yeah, 0 Main Street with the Chang family. We're going for 5 megawatts AC. This is ground mounted solar. We're going to be accessing off of Main Street. And on that note, during the construction phase, as we talked about in the past, all of our construction trucks are going to come from the north. So you guys are pretty familiar with the project. So I'll keep moving. On February 14th, we received Conservation Commission approval, which was a negative determination on our RDA. We talked about this wetland in the past. This was the IVW that GZA and our scientists that we hired agreed upon when they completed their site visit. We presented our findings to the commission, and they gave us a negative determination. I think
Conditions, but we don't have it yet.
with conditions. Yeah, we haven't received the hard copy yet, but one of the conditions was a silt fence around the perimeter, and during construction, and that's pretty straightforward. And in addition to that, we are adding a conservation seed mix around the interior perimeter of the silt fence, and that'll remain for the life of the project. And I handed out sort of those pictures of the conservation seed mix, so you get a sense of that. Anyways, moving on, I want to overview what we talked about last time and what we have prepared in response. So in addition to conservation approval, you asked us for a figure on pilot revenue. Just talking with our finance team. Again, this isn't firm, so I don't want to, commit to an exact number today. But we talked about $12,500 per megawatt AC per year, which over the course of 20 years is $1.25 million. And they wanted us to mention that we're not relying on any public services, so that 1.25 million, you won't see any losses in that sense. You asked us to remove the modules closest to the Zazlowski property to the south. We removed those modules. You can see them here. We pulled those back. And in the very southeast corner, we've got 2 more half rows. And that furthest southeastern row of modules is approximately 36 feet from the Zazlowski property line. So that's a change we implemented. You asked us to re-examine the setback from Main Street. We are holding firm to our 100-foot setback, but we prepared some sort of graphics for you guys to get a sense of what we're proposing. So the pictures here show you what it might look like. This is the sort of a visual rendering of the Hinoki Falls cypress from a Main Street point of view. And we also included some information on the tree itself. They're offset center to center, 30 feet, Dina?
30.
30 feet. We will plant them taller than 4 feet, and I think every year or 2 years they grow an additional 1.5 feet.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so we'll hit that in more detail. Conservation approval, we've since received that. You asked for enhanced decommissioning. I handed that out. On that note, I want to say that this formula that we've created for considering our decommissioning costs, we use this same template for the Apple Planning Board, and it was peer reviewed by Ty and Bond, and they approved of it and signed off on that. So we believe that our decommissioning costs are indeed accurate. And I think I've talked with the planning director. When Borrego Solar drafted that template for the town, it's probably during some older solar incentive programs. So since then, we see some efficiencies in our numbers and our labor rates and our equipment rentals, things like that give us this real number that we arrived at. And this has been in front of our finance team and engineers, and we feel confident in these figures. And in addition to that, on page 1, you'll see our narrative where we talk about abandonment, financial surety, things of that sort. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer those. You asked us to begin conversations with the town about Chapter 61A. The Changs have initiated conversations with the town as you guys asked. I think that, upon receiving approval, those conversations will continue, and ultimately the land will be removed from 61A, and that will be sorted out. So there's been an initial earnest effort, and we'll take it from there moving forward. And you asked for an update on the NHESP study. That's a separate process, and it's independent. They are assisting us in the formal long-form application right now. So that's our update there. And we'll get into more detail in a bit, but I do want to point out that the Vesper Sparrow is estimated. We haven't confirmed that they actually are on site, and when they are on site, they will most likely be feeding. They actually live in the woods. So we'll get into this in more detail later, but we've got some options for if they are on site for how we'll deal with that. Moving on, if you guys could flip to the landscaping plan.
Can you give us a page?
Or is that these handouts, or is it?
Yeah, sorry, it's
5.01?
5.01, okay.
Really, in terms of visual, physical changes to the plans, you'll see them here. I mentioned pulling the models back from the Soslavsky property line. And this is the other change around the perimeter. There's sort of this 1/4-inch hashed line around the interior of the perimeter fence. That's our conservation seed mix. And inside of the array, you'll see sort of this other pattern heading diagonally. That is our solar array seed mix, and we've included pictures of that for you guys. So those are the only changes to the plan since we last talked. We lost some power when we pulled the modules back from the Soslavsky line, so we increased the size of our solar panels, and we're now at sort of the max limit for our solar panels. They're 390 watts. We've got a little over 14,000 solar panels now using these Neo Solar Power 390 watt panels, and I included the spec sheet for those in the application package that I brought. Same company, slightly larger module. So small tweaks to the electrical single line diagram in the back of the plan set. So that covers changes so far. Does anyone have any questions?
So the solar array mix, or is it I guess it's the conservation wildlife seed mix which goes around the perimeter?
Mhm.
So that has, am I to, conclude from this one picture that those provide pollinator habitat?
That's correct.
With the seed mix that you use?
Mhm.
And then, the seed mix that you use between the arrays, we talked about this a little bit, I just wanna make sure that we have this, confirmed. You're not doing any spraying or anything to keep those down, that's just sort of naturally happening?
No spraying, yeah. And so this seed mix is optimized to reach a level of growth, their annual species, and inside of the site we'll maintain them on an as needed basis, but they shouldn't grow past the lowest edge of our solar panels. So it's
In height.
in height, correct? Yeah. So it's a largely self-contained system, but we'll mow as necessary. Yeah, no chemicals. Yeah. Moving forward, anything else?
When do you anticipate knowing more about that vestige there? Or is it on hold?
That's a good question. It's gonna probably be a little bit of time. NHESP is sort of working through us with
Can
the
you clarify
application.
that acronym?
This is National Heritage. Yeah. So I'll keep you guys updated on that. And again, just want to reiterate that that is largely independent of what we're doing here. If there are any agreements that would cause an impact on the site plan, we would of course come back before you guys, and we understand that this is the utmost importance and needs to be taken care of before construction, and it will be.
But it seems like that's quite a risk though for you guys.
Yeah.
I mean, if I look at, circular provided by the state, just for the audience's benefit, is from the Mass Department of Energy Resources and Department of Environmental Protection and the Mass Clean Energy Center called Clean Energy Results. Q&A on ground-mounted solar photovoltaic systems, and they talk about this particular subject. And in here it says, projects will need to file a MISO information request form, that's Mass Endangered Species Act information request form, along with a project plan, USGS geological survey, topographical map of the site, and $50 processing fee. NAGSP, which that acronym, Natural Heritage Endangered Species Program, will let the project administrators know within 30 days that the filing is complete, and then will determine within the next 60 days whether the project as proposed, and here's where it seems like quite a risk, would result in a take of the state-listed rare species that might require the project to be redesigned, scaled down, or abandon its plan. It seems like pretty slippery slope if you haven't actually filed that yet. Have you actually filed the MISA?
We filed the request, and we've received a letter back from them saying that there's estimated habitat on site, and now we're working through the more formal application, which is a little lengthier.
So I mean, at a minimum, we're looking at potentially 90 days, right? Because they have up to 30 days to let you know if your application is complete, and then 60 days in which to determine if it does result in a take. And my experience with the state is that they usually take all the time that they're granted in state legislation, so it would probably be 90 days.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's that's a construction delay, and we eat that cost. Can't build without it, but this is our strategy: is to sort of process both concurrently, and we will get it, and whatever the outcome, we'll work with it.
Okay, right,
I have a question.
Yep.
I'm concerned about a little bit about the decommissioning agreement. I know you want to leave the habitat as much as possible, but I don't notice any plans to get rid of the gravel path, the gravel road. And I'm just curious to why that isn't involved in part of the decommissioning cost.
That's a good question. It could be. We can get you a figure on that. In terms of, yeah, we can figure that out. The equipment we need and the estimated hours, we can get with our engineer on that.
The road could possibly just grow in, it's gravel, it's not.
I would like,
paved,
I
so it
mean,
would just go
ideally
in.
the idea is that we can farm it still with me afterwards, so, or something.
Absolutely.
And I don't want to necessarily incentivize the heavy road already.
The pad too, there's a decommissioning plan that comes out. Okay,
That's in there.
and that's in here, yeah, okay.
I have a question. I don't know who.
Yep.
Looking at your grasses that you're planning on using, is it possible that these species would make this land in 20 years better than it is right now?
Yeah, so there are several different types of rye grass that we'll be planting on the site, which fix nitrogen. Typically they're used as cover crops in between seasons, so essentially in 20 years, you can assume that this will probably be more farmable than it is today.
I saw the pea, I know the pea
Yeah, so like,
has a lot of nitrogen in it.
Okay, right, Jack. Okay. Yeah, okay, go ahead.
In reference with, you guys brought up concrete, it reminded me, I'm sure you've all read the memo prepared by Michael. I just want to make clear that I have not intentionally withheld any information from you guys. So when I talked about the concrete pad, I meant that it was a concrete pad. And when I talked about the fence, I was not withholding the fact that there could be, or are planning to implement sort of concrete bases for the fence, and that is accounted for in our decommissioning estimate. So just want to make that clear that we're open about what we're presenting with you guys.
It's on the plans and the details.
I actually don't, it may not have been picked up in one of the minutes, but I remember you mentioned it when we talked about the spikes for the array. You also mentioned that you have to use the concrete footing for the post for the fence.
Yeah.
That was good. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so next on my agenda is to I want to run through 5.4.7A and B. I know this is your guys' wheelhouse, so I'll move through it as quickly as possible. So I'm going to start with the Hatfield site plan approval requirements, 5.4.7B. I'm going to start with 5.4.7BA.
You have these in your, is this written out in your application or?
I've got one copy here.
Okay,
I don't have a copy of the bylaws with me.
all right, go ahead.
Cool. So 5.4.7BA, list of hazardous materials on site. We have included that and outlined that in our traffic and safety narrative. That was in our original application, and is the fresh one that mirrors the original that I brought with me tonight. We asked for blueprints and drawings signed by an engineer. We've been providing those. Copy of an interconnection application, which includes a water free line electrical diagram. That was included initially, and again, I brought it with me tonight. We are currently in queue with the utility, as is everyone in the state right now. Documentation of system components, that's with me, including noise levels that we expect to generate. So the panels, the batteries, the transformers are largely silent. What will make noise is the inverters, and we've included a noise report on that. So that's in the application, both applications that you guys have seen.
That noise would only be during the day, or when the sun's out.
Yeah, when the power's producing, you'll hear a sort of a subtle hum.
If you're right next to it.
if you're right next to it.
Go one up.
Contact info, we've included that. Operation and maintenance plan, we have included that. And again, I brought another copy with me tonight if you have any questions on that. It's like a 100-point visual mechanical checklist. We come out up to 2 times per year to take care of that. And in addition to that, we do snow removal on an as-needed basis and vegetative management on an as-needed basis. Zoning district designation for parcels, we provided a map for that our GIS expert put together. Proof of liability insurance, the one I provided the first time around is expired, so I brought the updated one with me tonight. An emergency response plan, that is included in our application package. I've been talking to the fire chief. He is happy with the plans. He sent me an order form for a lockbox. So before the project is commissioned, he wants us to put a particular lockbox up, give him the code, and he can come put keys in it. We talked about the width of our access roads, and he seems satisfied with the hammerheads. I think we have 3 hammerheads on site, so if they need any large equipment turnarounds on site, they can do that. Our emergency response plan is pretty straightforward. I think makes up about 2/3 of a page. I've provided it if you guys want to check it out. It's basically call 911 and don't touch anything. And the fire department agrees. They said that they'll sit and watch it burn. So that's our plan. Okay.
What's the likelihood of something like that actually happening? I mean,
We haven't seen it. None of our operating assets have ever caught on fire.
is that something that could even happen to someone's home with the panels that are on their roofs?
I know a long time ago it happened, like when hippies and pickup trucks were doing it, putting solar on people's homes. We don't really see it as much anymore. And, National Electric Code is sort of kept people integral, in line. Anyways, moving on, lighting. We will have 1 light on the equipment pad. It's a simple LED. It has to be under 14 feet. I provided a spec sheet for that. If you want to see anything on, brightness or noise or structure. Signage, I brought an example of our signage with us. I think we've also included it in the past. We have emergency signage, and then we have informational signage. Actually, I can pull it out for you guys. So this is our proposed.
Near the access road.
Yeah. So we've got two levels of signage here. We've got emergency signage, which is red. We've got informational / educational signage, which tells you who we are, who operates it, who to contact in case of emergency. This is just an example.
And are those the dimensions that you'll use?
Generally, yes, but it may be larger or smaller.
No, actually, smaller is better.
Okay. Yeah. Indeed.
Give me more tiles. This is 3 feet, but this is pretty small, 3 foot by feet. And what's the dimensions of these guys?
So we stick those on all of our transformers typically. Usually about 8 inches.
And your other signage, this is outside the fence by the access road.
Correct. Yeah. And it's near the gate. Yeah. And if you want
It's
to.
not actually even on Main Street, it's on an access road.
Yeah. And if you want to, shrink it to 1 foot by 1 foot and hang it on the access gate, we can do that. It's not an issue. But we do need some sort of public-facing signage for emergencies and
Right, but it's
contact.
not out towards Main Street.
Correct. Yeah, so that'll be out there with our lockbox for the fire chief. Control of vegetation, we went over this, no chemicals, and it will be controlled on an as-needed basis. Annual reporting, we agree to that. Abandonment, we understand and agree. Removal requirements, again, we understand and agree. And extended commissioning, understand and agree. I'll move on to 5.4.7A, site plan approval criteria. Number 1, 5.4.7A1, The site plan complies with performance standards in section 6.1 to 6.7 where applicable. Where applicable, we believe that our plans as presented do comply with that. Number 2, we shall address the recommendations of the Hatfield design guidelines. A lot of what you're seeing here is us, to the extent feasible, complying with those design guidelines. We'll get into more detail later, but screening is a big part of what we're doing to sort of uphold the integrity of the community. Number 3, site minimizes traffic and safety impacts of proposed development on adjacent highways or roads. We talked about this in the past. We're going to bring construction trucks from the north, so you won't be seeing them in town. And again, that's for an abbreviated phase, probably 3 to 4 months, and afterwards you'll see operations and maintenance trucks, typical pickup truck on site 1 to 3 times a year, or as needed for mowing. Then we're going to get into number 4. The proposed development, to the extent feasible, is integrated into the landscape, protects abutting properties. We feel that we've adequately addressed that with the Main Street screening, the seed mixes we're using, and then again to the south to shield sort of John McClellan's and the Slazowski view to the south. We're showing a cedar fence along this perimeter. In the past, the feedback I received from you guys is that the community doesn't seem to care whether the Main Street facing fence is chain link or cedar. So we're showing it as chain link again, but in the past we've shown it as cedar, and it can be either or. But in this version, you're seeing cedar on the south, chain link on the east.
At a minimum, if it's chain link on the east, we required one of the other solar arrays in town that stretch of the chain link fence that faced the road be green color as opposed to the silver.
Okay, like vinyl clad or just a green?
It was a greenish. I don't remember if it's vinyl. It's green. I know it's green. I drove by it the other day, but I don't know if it's vinyl clad. But it's a green fencing as opposed to silver fencing, which we then matching with the trees.
Okay. So I'll move on. 5.4.7-A-4B. Minimizes adverse environmental impacts on such features as wetlands, floodplains, and aquifer recharge areas. This is adequately addressed in our plans. We've run our engineer has run stormwater calculations. Again, this was approved by Conservation Commission, and based on all the modeling we've done, we do not expect more stormwater to leave site than already does. If anything, we can maybe expect less. C, minimizes obstruction of scenic views from publicly accessible locations. I brought pictures of the Hinoki false cypress offset. We've got the fence, which will be green, vinyl clad if required, cedar fence to the south. Preserves unique natural or historical features. We have none of those on site. Minimizes tree, vegetation, and soil removal and grade changes. There are almost no trees on site. Grade changes, if any, will be minimal, and soil is not leaving the site. As you know, it's so flat that we don't anticipate grading. Maybe in a few sections where there are dips, they might prefer to smooth that out. But again, no soil will leave, and if you guys don't want grading, we won't grade. The slopes are so minimal that it's not necessary. Maximizes open space retention. We do not have any on site. Screens objectionable features from neighboring properties and roadways. I think solar is beautiful, so I don't see any objectionable features, but we've done everything we can to screen it from every direction, and we're relying on vegetative screening to the northwest and south, and to the south we've got the cedar fence, to the east the Hinoki false cypress. Moving on to 5, architectural design, layout, and landscaping is in harmony with the historic rural character of the neighborhood and town of Hatfield. I think we're all in agreement that we've done everything we can to preserve that, and Chris will talk more about this in a second, but we've added these seed mixes that attract pollinator species, and think that that's a really important thing to implement in these sorts of projects, especially at this time. Moving on. The proposed development is served with adequate water supply and waste disposal systems, not connected to water or waste disposal. We have no dependence on town infrastructure. Site plan shows adequate measures to prevent pollution of surface or groundwater, to minimize erosion and sedimentation, minimize changes in groundwater levels, and assure no increase in runoff or potential for flooding. All these are adequately addressed and shown in our plans. Per Conservation Commission, we're adding a silt fence during the construction phase, which will help with sedimentation and erosion control. And the conservation seed mix around the interior perimeter sort of acts as an additional vegetative buffer for sedimentation, erosion, and water. And again, the site is really flat, and with the seed mixes that we're proposing, we expect it to potentially be a little less wet. The site plan shows that to the extent feasible, adequate measures have been taken to protect historic structures and sites at the location. Electric lines, telecom, and other such utilities shall be underground. No historic features, and on site, we will run that underground. So that concludes my review of 5.4.7A and B. And I think we are now going to talk a little more about the landscaping plan. So, Gina. Oh, zoning. Yeah, sorry, zoning. Missed it.
So I'm gonna go over the zoning and the use of dimensional requirements and show how we're complying with that. So just as a summary, on page 18 of the zoning code, large ground mount solar generating systems can be cited as follows. As you are aware, by special permit and site plan review in the RR district, rural residential, overlay residential, town center business, and agricultural. By special permit in the business, industrial, and light industrial. And we are special permit site plan review in the rural residential. It's an accessory use under section 6.26, and large ground mount solar generating system is defined as solar PV or thermal system that generates power for resale over 500 kilowatts or is larger than 2 acres and meets zoning, which this project does. We're impacting, is it 7 acres? So yeah, we're over 2 acres. I think our current area is 7.5 or so.
You mean panel coverage?
Yeah,
So panel coverage is 8% of the total 95 acres on site.
Yeah.
And that's just panels. And if we're talking about, sorry, got all too many handouts.
Yeah, I have all the other ones.
If we're talking about total acreage, it's 29.6 acres. That's the fence line and everything within it. The panel area, so modules and the row spacing between those, is 24.3 acres, and that includes the large IVW in the northeast portion of the site. Sorry, Gina didn't care.
So the planning board has determined the project is an accessory use that can be cited in the zone, special permit, and site plan review. Existing use of the property is farming and other agricultural uses, row crops. And proposed conditions, we would fill the array and then continue with agricultural uses, such as establishing a pollinator meadow, possible beekeeping, someone would like to keep bees on the site, possible grazing for sheep, which is becoming popular. We've had requests on other projects for grazing, and there's been success with that. And also, we'd be willing to offer the site for agricultural research to a local university or a college if they're interested.
Can I add something to that? We're working on a project in Boulder County, Colorado, and partnered with the National Renewable Energy Lab to study valuable crops that grow in low water environments and within and amongst solar panels. So that's just one example of the type of research that can be done. Like how can you produce a valuable agricultural product in the next to the solar farm and have two concurrent uses.
Okay, so as far as the dimensional and density regulations, for the rural residential zone, minimum lot area is 45,000 square feet. Our lot is 95 acres or 4,138,200 square feet, so we're covered there. Minimum front yard is 35 feet, we're providing 100 feet. Minimum side yard, 15, we're providing 36. Minimum rear yard requirement is 30, project will provide 825 feet. The maximum height permitted is 35 feet, and we're plus or minus 9, is that correct? 9 feet for the panels. And maximum lot coverage is 25%, we're providing 8%. I just wanted to go over quickly, just a quick discussion of the front yard requirements for all the other zones that solar is permitted with a special use permit or site plan review. The overlay residential is 35 feet, the town center and town center business 35, business is 35, agricultural 35. The greatest front yard requirement is in the industrial and the light industrial at 50 feet, and we're providing 100 feet. Vegetative screens in the industrial zone are required to reach a height of 6 feet within 4 years of installation. And we'll meet that, not that we're required to, because we're not in the industrial zone, but we are meeting what's required in that zone. I think Zach mentioned the minimum distance between neighbor to the south, property line and the closest module is 36 feet, to the north, 62 feet. So that would be the other side yard. I think that's it for now.
All right, almost there, guys. So we're going to talk about potential visual impacts and mitigation. We've talked about the landscape plan, the cedar fence to the south, our fencing on the rest. The setback, have you guys had a chance to look at the rendering I brought?
This one here.
Yes.
This one.
Yeah. Any questions on that? Again, this is sort of a rough idea, but we wanted to put a visual to it of what it might look like from Main Street.
How close to the road do the trees go? There looks like it's about maybe 20 feet. That's the closest tree, or about half of that distance, so it's probably closer to 50.
40, 50.
And what will you have, what would you propose to put in that area between the trees and the road? Would you put one of these mixers in there?
Yeah, we talked about using our conservation seed mix potentially there in front of the trees. We think it would look really nice.
So that would be the one that has the wildflowers and milkweed and switchgrass, this one here.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
But that would be your responsibility.
Yep, we would do that and maintain it as well.
And you talked about possibly maintaining what's there already in some areas. That's right.
Yeah. So Gina, do you want to talk a little bit more about the Hinoki?
Yeah, we had the sheet, but basically they voted 20 feet in height for a compact species. The spread is 15 feet off center. Very hardy. They're tall, fast growing, broad, with widespread branches. They're relatively low maintenance, so we check them during our routine O&M visits, inspections. And they have a low canopy, so you only see 2 feet in the ground. The first 2 feet of the trunk typically. And they're good for planting under power lines. I think they're typically used for that. It does well in full sun to partial shade, grows in average to moist conditions, it's highly tolerant and not particular of soil type or pH. And the growth rate, we've done some research on the landscape architect provided a growth rate of 25 feet in 20 years. And roughly it would be 2.5 for the first 2 years, 3.75 for 3 years, 5 feet in 4 years. So if we put them in at 4 feet, within 4 feet, 4 years, they'll be, up to 9 feet or so. And then
In the height of your fence.
7 feet,
Okay.
And the panels are not.
and they're very tall.
So wait a second, the panels are 9 feet, the fence is 7 feet high, the panels are 9 feet high?
The highest edge, so they'll be on racking.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
the lowest edge will probably be somewhere around here. Yeah, they'll be too high in the portrait, so sort of stacked like that at an angle. Chris, is there anything you wanted to say on the seed mix, or did we?
We covered most of it. And so we are incorporating several pollinator species, and something that we're looking into partnering with local beekeepers to utilize this space, because there is a lot of empty space on Solar Farm that has potential. We're exploring several different options to utilize that space. The other thing that you brought up that I was going to mention is that there are several nitrogen fixing species, ryegrass, partridge pea, types of legumes that will improve the soil health over time. So as opposed to other types of development, in 20 years, you could take this system down and farm, and it can return to these that was originally. And in a sense, it preserves the space. So we think that this mix will improve the quality of the land over time.
Anything else at this point?
Yeah. Do you have anything, Gina? Okay. Do you want to run through number 12? We've mostly covered. Yeah, so we see a lot of benefits to this project, and we hope you guys see the same. We've implemented town feedback and your feedback to the extent possible. We think that there's a positive tax benefit to the town, a positive environmental benefit, a benefit to the Changs, and to everyone involved. It's a good temporary use of the land, and it will return hopefully probably better than it is now. I know right now it's, they're having a hard time leasing it out for anything at all. And so we hope to borrow it for a little bit of time and return it better than we found it. Yeah, you guys have anything to add?
No, anything more on stormwater?
Yeah, regarding
Yeah.
stormwater, I guess, that's a concern that arose today. Again, we talked about how our existing and proposed drainage flows are not expected to vary at all. The site's going to remain vegetated with very little impervious area. Just because there are panels above the ground doesn't mean that all of the ground is impervious. And, when our engineer designs these projects, they account for that, right? So there is a certain amount of quote unquote imperviousness, but the measures that we've implemented are to sort of push back against that. So they model stormwater, they model certain percentages of impervious, and they come to a conclusion on what needs to be implemented on site for sedimentation, erosion, and stormwater. And that's what you see here. And again,
I'm looking through a formal report because you noticed on our checklist in the initial application, we made a statement that we did not submit that, and that everything is handled in the plans and the erosion control. And we went through conservation approval, and you did a completeness review on the application, and that wasn't requested either. That essentially, the way the checklist was completed was a request for a waiver. And if that wasn't clear, we're requesting that now.
and yeah,
So I'm just, I'll just ask, so it's on the record, I haven't gone past a ground mounted solar system yet where I haven't seen grass growing under the arrays. Is that your experience, that the grass, there's enough sunlight that grass actually grows under the array, things difference between the arrays?
Yep, that's exactly correct. And we expect, our mix to grow under the array as well.
How big is the concrete part that's underneath the array?
There's no concrete under there. Yeah, and
The one pad.
I'm glad you brought up concrete. I have some figures for you guys on the pads on site. So this area here is not all concrete. It'll be gravel, and the parts that are concrete are the batteries, which are the long rectangles, the inverters, and the transformers. And so for the transformers, we're looking at 10 feet by 4 feet. For the battery pads, we're looking at 40 feet by 9.5 feet. Cement pads underneath that electrical equipment, and that's per NEC code, and we've included a decommissioning cost for the breakup and removal of those pads. So sorry, what were we talking about before that?
The grass.
Stormwater.
Oh, the grass. Yeah. Anything else on stormwater?
Okay. All right, so moving along, we have to, I'm gonna ask if, and I do have a,
Maybe one more comment around that, the stormwater, the conservation commission peer reviewer as well, because they reviewed all the plans and there wasn't a request for a full blown analysis for the site. So it just seems like
And then those, even if not required, we always do them before construction.
Just what
We can't finance the project or build it without it, and that's the model for almost every greenfield development. That's what they do is, implement these controls at the early stage, and prior to construction, you can't build until you have the full report. So.
And everything will be done in accordance with Mass DEP stormwater regulations, so only 5 acres at a time would be exposed to contamination here.
oh, during construction.
Yeah, we follow the state regulations and the SWIP and have weekly and whatever other inspections are required. And we have our own construction oversight group. We'd be performing our own inspections as well.
And back to your point, you're talking about under the modules.
Yeah.
This is purely anecdotal, but we have a project in Colorado that I just visited, and the panels, the shade from the panels has created sort of a protection and habitat zone for prairie dogs. So out on the site, you see hawks up on the power lines waiting for the prairie dogs to leave, sort of the protection of the solar panels. And that's been interesting because, 10 years ago, the state considered solar a loss for habitat, and we've seen quite the opposite. We've got rattlesnakes and wild hare and prairie dogs on site. It's pretty cool to see. So, just a side note.
All right, so are there any, is there anyone in the audience who would like to comment on the project as a supporter of the project? Please introduce yourself.
Oh, my name is Sidney Chang. I support this because I support green, clean energy, and this will be good use of the land. They're going to take better care of the land than we do right now. It's very difficult to farm that land. The farmer who used it last year lost his shirt. I mean, he just lost a lot of money on the investment on the land. And, weathers are, you get these bad years. It's often, it's not just once, it's not every year, but it's often. So farming that right now, maybe in 20 years, they'll figure out a way to drain that place and make it a better, but during that time, we'll be able to make a lot of good clean energy for the local economy. And it's good for the town of Hatfield. I think you'll generate more income from the property tax, I believe.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? All right, now I'll open the floor up to opponents, but before I recognize anyone in the audience, I did get a note Darrell Williams, who, if any of you were following the hearings in the past, has been present at all of the other hearings. He couldn't be here tonight because he's on the finance committee and they're having a meeting downstairs. So he asked if I would just read something into the record. I will be unable to make the meeting tonight in regards to Mr. Chang putting up a 5 megawatt solar project on his property in Hatfield. I have several questions and comments. I am torn by this project. On the one hand, I would prefer a solar project to the alternative of putting up lots of houses. This is decent agricultural land. Where they are putting the solar project is the best agricultural land on the parcel. The land behind the proposed project is wet and not the best for farming. So from a farm perspective, I would much rather farm the east side of this property where the proposed project is on the west side. That being stated, it's also where houses may go if the solar project is denied. I'm concerned over the size of the project. Why does it have to be 5 megawatts? If the size were reduced, then it could be moved further away from Main Street and away from the abutting houses. A smaller project would be more palatable. In the drawings presented at the last hearing, it did not look like the project was staying 100 feet away from defined wetlands. They had solar panels right up to the wetlands, and I think this new design that addresses that 100-foot setback. Your other one earlier is not set back around that wetland in the center of the property. There were also solar panels very close to the Swarovski property, which would be shaded by the trees on that property. If the panels were moved away from the trees and the wetlands, it looks to me that they would not have enough space to put in a whole 5 megawatt system. As a farmer, I would much rather have that land be farmed. I would encourage Mr. Chang to look into the state APR program and see how that might help them make that land more profitable for farming. Thank you sincerely, Darrell. So, thank you. Just wanted to get that comment in. So, I'm assuming Bernie, you would like to speak? Or your representative?
I'm Michael Feld. They don't call us mouthpieces for nothing.
Yes.
Lawyer with Green Miles Lipton. I have submitted in some 30-plus page memos, and that's thanks to Bernie. It's one of the most detailed analyses that I've done of a solar project in a long, long time. What I'd like, and I hope you all will have the opportunity to read it. My perception, both from a little bit before the hearing when a couple of the solar folks were nice enough to talk to me, and from what I've heard, is that they have absolutely no intention of doing anything but ignoring each and every point in that memorandum unless you specifically ask them to deal with it. And I think one of the most important ones, both legally, environmentally, and practically, is the one that the chairperson, Mr. Wagner, raised about the National Heritage and Endangered Species Program. I believe what you were reading from, Mr. Wagner, the language comes from the regulations, which are 321 CMR Code of Mass Regulations 10.00. And what those regulations make clear, first of all, this is priority habitat. I was able in less than an hour to find the map online that is at page 11 of my memorandum. No question that it's priority habitat. Nobody needed to go ask the state about that. But in terms of the take, okay, your point is exactly correct. And around page 16 of my memo, there's a case called Chambers versus Peabody, where the court notes that the location of structures is a matter of key importance. So not only, sir, are you correct practically, because if they have to change something, you're going to go through this all again. They're going to have to come back, file an amendment. There'll have to be new public notice. There will have to be revised plans. In other words, everything you are doing right now, you will have to start from scratch and go over it all again. And what Chambers versus Peabody basically says is you can't do it that way. That is a matter of importance and substance. And if there is a gaping hole, which they've left in their project, where they may have to, as you noted correctly, Mr. Wagner, either make substantial changes or possibly not do it at all, that cannot be left to future determination. Now, they can stand here and say quite correctly, well, that's an independent process. That in itself, the take issue, that's independent, that's between them and the Endangered Species Program. But what that means for the number, location, and layout of the project, that's the subject of the site plan and special permit that's before you, and that must be resolved before the special permit is issued, not after the special permit is issued. There's a couple of other things that you folks raised that I think are absolutely crucial. One is, we've heard a lot of assurances about how everything's fine with the drainage. Well, it doesn't satisfy the zoning requirements for stormwater to say somehow that was looked at by the Conservation Commission. And in fact, I told one of the solar folks, this is, in that key respect, the worst application I've seen. And I have both opposed and advocated for solar projects up to 6 megawatts, and I have never, ever seen one where the developer tried to stand there and get past a planning board with verbal assurances and did not come clean and hand over the detailed stormwater study, or try to get away with saying something like, well, we're not going to do a stormwater study until we hit the construction phase. And as I note in my memorandum, and the female member here referred to the state stormwater standards, those standards, thanks to, I think, the business interests in Boston, only require technical paper 40, which has precipitation data from 1938 to 1957. I go into great detail in here as to what is very, very wrong with TP40 and how they need to use, NRCC, National Regional Climate Center at Cornell University data, which covers 1938 to 2010. And what I can say is, every time I've brought that up, what I have found is the engineers go back and redo their stormwater study using the 1938 to 2010 NRCC data. And frankly, it's not a big deal for them. The engineers all have a computer program called HydroCAD, version 9, the ones who are up to date have version 10, and the NRCC data is in that program. There is absolutely no reason why that information can't be put before you. Verbal assurances are simply not sufficient when you're dealing with land use. And I note also in another section of my memo, the risk is private nuisance. What if they're wrong, okay, and drainage becomes a problem elsewhere? Something else that I was pretty surprised to hear from these folks when they say that, well, out in Colorado, somebody might be considering dual use of the land. Well, that's the patented solar system of Hyperion Systems in Amherst. They might want to contact Ann Marley and Jake Marley, HYPERION, Hyperion Solar Systems. They've got some demonstration sites in the valley. They're working with a number of developers. They're at 100 University Drive, directly across the street from the Mass Department of Food and Agriculture. What the Hyperion system is, was developed by the late David Marley, is systems on high poles. What that means is you don't have the trade-off. The land can continue to be used for agricultural use while it's used for solar. Finally, because I'm not going to burden you by trying to go through everything I wrote in that 30 plus pages, it's clear that one of your all biggest concerns is housing. Well, the Natural Heritage and Endangered Species Program can severely limit the number of houses. For example, in those regulations, they provide on a piece of land for an exemption for up to 10,000 square feet, but only one exemption can be granted. And I respectfully submit one question that needs to be explored is, depending on the habitat for the endangered species, it may be possible to build not more than one house on that property because of the priority habitat, which takes up virtually the entire site and more of the solar site, and which is pictured on page 11 of my memo. That's another reason why that issue really needs to be resolved, because based on the concerns I've heard from you and that I've read in the memo, in the minutes rather, we really need to know whether more than one house can be built on this site. And with respect to that, and the court case, Pepin versus Fisheries and Wildlife, is in the memo, I would think the Chang family might want to know if, as in the Pepin case, their land is going to be burdened with a permanent forever conservation easement and deed restriction. Because what that means is, in order to build this project, and the Pepin family took it all the way to the state Supreme Court and they lost, okay? And Fisheries and Wildlife demand for a permanent deed restriction and conservation easement in the Registry of Deeds was upheld. When the solar project goes, the Chang family could find their land permanently restricted. And I hope that's something that they would be interested in looking into, perhaps with their own attorneys. So everything else I think is in my memo, and I hope you would just ask these folks to respond to it. Thank you.
My understanding of that easement, that from the easement required under the National Heritage Program, if I'm correct, that still would allow agriculture to occur on the property, right?
10.02, there are two definitions, and they parallel what's in the wetlands regulation. That's why, for example, if you're a farmer, as long as you, number one, have the current agricultural use, you don't discontinue it for 5 years, and number two, what you do is normal maintenance of the land in agricultural use. Those definitions in 321 CMR 10.02 are very, very detailed, and I didn't have a chance to put them side by side, but they look to me like they almost parallel exactly the exemptions for agricultural use and normal maintenance of agricultural use in the wetlands regulations. Yes.
So on the subject of stormwater drainage, I mean, this is obviously an issue and one that you were asking for a waiver on. Mr. Pill, I think it's fair to say that the 376,380 square feet of impervious surface is not a new Lowe's commercial building. These are, I mean, let's be fair here. These are panels in which the water flows off it and lands on ground, and then can flow under the panels in front of it, which has got ground on it as well. So it's not like this is a 376,000 square foot new RK miles or something like that that's going on this property.
Your threshold, though, is only 10,000 square feet, and one.
Oh, no, for the natural heritage.
No, you're in section 7 of your zoning bylaw. The threshold for the stormwater analysis is only 10,000 square feet, and I quote that in here. And for example, they've got, what I'm suggesting is, and I don't think it's unreasonable, and we have no way of knowing, they've got the road, which is not just going to be a few rocks thrown around. It's compacted gravel, very compacted, with a crown on it, and the only reason for that crown shown on the plan is because the water is going to drain off it. And there's the polypropylene mat that's underneath it, okay? And I'm glad Zach has promised that they're going to change the decommissioning plan to include that. But there are, I think, when you take all of this, one question is there at least the equivalent with the concrete pads, the road, and 8 acres of panels? Is there at least, say, the equivalent of the 10,000 square foot threshold, which is less than a quarter acre, in your section 7? And unless they do a study, we're all flying blind. But I appreciate that point, and right. So all I'm saying is, if we've got 8 acres of panels and the 300 and some thousand square feet, but the threshold is only 10,000, plus the road, plus the pads and the panels, and we really don't know what this is going to be. It ought to be looked into, if for no other reason, to make sure with documentation, not just verbal assertions, that the neighboring properties are protected.
So can we boil down your memo in a nutshell to, it sounds like from what you focused on in your comments, that there's two really key things. One, you and your client are being very altruistic towards the Changs by pointing out that the Natural Heritage Endangered Species Program could kibosh this whole project. And that it's probably better to know that now than to know it in the future. And it may have a significant impact on what happens with your land, regardless of whether this project goes through. That seems to be number one. And number two is the stormwater issue. Is there other issues amongst the 10 that you've raised that are deal breakers here, if indeed these other items are addressed and addressed to the satisfaction of the state when it comes to Natural Heritage Program and stormwater management, so that we're assured that this isn't going to flood the neighbor either to the north, south, east, or west, or whatever. Are there other matters in here that are deal breakers?
I'm not sure what you mean by.
In terms of will the if these two issues can be resolved and addressed.
The decommissioning, which I certainly hope you're going to have gone over by peer review. I don't know if you use Ty and Bond, they're certainly perfectly good, but when their numbers, and okay, Zach has asserted, let's assume in good faith, that somehow they've come up with efficiencies that their numbers are tens of thousands of dollars lower than that Ethol template. Well, when decommissioning 25 years in the future, when all these folks are long gone and who knows who's going to own it, who knows what their finances, all I can say is I'm sure you're going to want to make sure that there is more money rather than less, and that if anything, money can go back to whoever owns the project at that time, and that absolutely must be peer reviewed before you can accept it. So that's one issue. The other is the priority habitat. Yes, the national heritage and endangered species, and that's both the environmental issue and the legal issue that cannot be left to future determination. And yes, I think the Chains want to look into it. The stormwater management, I am praying that given the scale of this, you're not just going to hand them a waiver and essentially leave it blind for, the last thing any of the neighbors want to have to do is bring a lawsuit for private nuisance in the Superior Court when this is built. And I'm hopeful that a stormwater management plan done with modern NRCC, Northeast Regional Climate Center, that's it, Northeast Regional Climate Center at Cornell University data, not the outdated technical paper 40, will make sure there's not going to be that drainage issue. The table of use regulations, she acknowledged that that's under accessory use. Okay, and I deal with that issue. That's a legal issue, and I'm not sure they or anybody else can do anything.
Yeah, and the only gentleman or only individual rather who was on the board at the time that the solar bylaw and table and was added to the table of use is not here tonight to provide any kind of historical background on that.
Would he be able to vote? Do you have the provision that will still enable him to vote, or does this mean it's just the four of you who would?
It would just be the four of us. He was at the previous hearing, but not here tonight.
So just the four of you will be voting?
Yeah, but in terms of just getting into historical background from him. I mean, I read through this, and it does seem odd that it's, it seems like, a roof or ground mount system would be an accessory use, right? You don't want somebody's yard to be so overloaded with ground mounted systems that it's actually overwhelming the otherwise use of their house lot. But I mean, to think of setting up a large ground mount system of 500 kW or larger, or over 500 kW or larger than 2 acres, and call that an accessory use. It seems to me that there was perhaps an oversight here, that this should be a use in and of itself. Wouldn't you agree, Mr. Phil? Mr. Phil,
I can say I have never before seen that large scale project categorized as an accessory
Yeah,
use. But that is what it said.
no, I know that's what it said, and that might, and when I'm looking at this now, the only one of these that I could see being considered an accessory use is the roof or ground mounting system, because again, you don't want, somebody, filling up their backyard with ground mount being less than, 200, kW, and somehow, overwhelming their lot, where their house is. But, medium ground mount of over, up to, 500 kW or a large ground mount over 500 kW, it's no different than a commercial building going in. So to call it an accessory use seems to me to have been an oversight. I know.
Actually, one thing, and it says for resale of energy, and that's its own use. If the power is just being sold, that's not accessory to what's there already.
It's, excuse me, that generates power for resale over 500 kW, but again, it's still, we want to have our town council look at this.
And the final thing, was the last section where I am hoping you will continue the hearing so that all these questions can be, addressed. And I would ask you please, to do that.
All right, is there anybody else, here that wants to comment on this project?
Can I respond to?
I just want to make sure that, and then I'll let you respond, and then we're going to close, the hearing. So, the formal part of the hearing.
So just on the natural heritage review, our experience has been different than what Mr. Phil is saying. We have another project, it's a condition of our approval. Same thing, entire site is covered in habitat, and we're working through the process on that. And we'll have a conditional approval, we have a conservation approval, and it's a risk we took, as we said before. And it looks like there's some level of mitigation that actually won't require us to change the layout of the site. We're working with them on another mitigation plan. So it's not the case that every time it's dependent on the design process, or it has to be handled during design. And that's our one project where that's happening right now.
She's
So-
looking at me, I'm not sure if she expects me to
Yeah.
respond. I mean, I'm gonna defer to
I'm
you.
saying it really goes case by case, and a take is defined very differently. There are all kinds of take and no take situations. And this is something our wildlife consultant can explain better, but there are straight takes, there are takes with conditions, there are no takes, and there are no takes with conditions. And
So did I hear you correctly that this project that you're referring to, you got a approval conditioned on the successful result of
Yeah.
your habitat?
And we have to come back and
Right.
address it pre-construction before we go for a building permit. If the project goes away, well, it's our problem and not the town's. So,
Just to touch upon you asked, well, you know this is a risk, is that risk you're going to take? And, before we invest anything in development, we contact NGSP and identify what species is on site, research the species, and determine what the impact would be of the project. If it's a major impact that will hurt the species, obviously that's not a risk we're going to take. In the case of the Vesper sparrow, this habitat is not where they nest, it's where they feed. So the habitat loss would be temporary only during the period of construction. And we determined that would be not enough of an impact to warrant it. So
That's your conclusion.
that's our, well, it went in our internal analysis.
Right, but that's not, but that hasn't been confirmed
It has not.
or denied by the Natural Heritage Program.
But the existence of priority habitat does not prohibit development. It really depends on the nature of the habitat, the species in question. And so, I mean, I want to make that clear, and it's not something that we weren't aware of or that we didn't investigate. It was something that we took great care to include and factor into the development project.
Okay.
And then one other comment on the stormwater, since we're requesting a waiver, we would have, if we were not requesting a waiver, we would have explained that our engineers do use the HydroCAD model, TR30, all the inputs and the current rainfall data to do all the calculations.
They're
We don't
using
use
NRCC
outdated,
as well.
we do,
Let's see it.
all the updated.
Yeah, why do you
We're
need a
requesting a waiver?
Why are you requesting a waiver then for it if you?
You're seeing plans that incorporate this work and this mental labor. So the sedimentation, erosion control, and the stormwater design that you see in the plans are the result of what you could think of as like 30% analysis, which is, I've never seen an engineer these days who's not using NRCC and HydroCAD. And so that's implemented in here. Typically, I mean, the MO is to provide a full report later on, but at this stage, they would not have stamped this and allowed me to come represent the plans if they weren't confident in the degree of thought that they put into stormwater here. So, if there were red flags, you would see swales or retention basins or drainage ditches. But we, based on modeling, what you're seeing here reflects their opinion on that. And again, I would just add to that, if you guys want a full swale, and the reason why we haven't provided it is because it's at this stage in development, it's really expensive, and sometimes prohibitively expensive at this stage. And if that's something that you guys want, make it a part of condition, and we can
Well,
do that.
is that, but you just said that your engineers already did stormwater analysis, so I'm not sure why it would be so expensive then if they can just provide us with the data to show what they consider to be the impact on the site, and if there's no off-site impact, that they can document that, and we can have that then peer reviewed.
Yeah, you're right. A good portion of the work was already done. We've never commissioned them for a full-blown report, but that is something we could do.
Okay, I'm gonna close the public hearing at this point. And to me, I think that there's the two issues raised are the one on the natural heritage, and of course, it's entirely feasible that you could provide an approval of the project subject to, and that be a condition of it. But I think the stormwater data and information is important enough. I have my own theories on this, but I'm not an engineer. As I mentioned, it seems as if the water falls off and lands on the ground or flows under it. So it's not, as we talked about, it's not like you're putting up 130,000 square foot Amazon warehouse. But I think that it's important for us to have this information, and if we can utilize the same people that, Harry, you guys had someone from the Conservation Commission, right? You had an outside reviewer.
Yeah.
And we might even be able to utilize the same individual to peer review that. And at the same time, we will, I think we could take the necessary steps to have this decommissioning plan peer reviewed as well. Mr. Phil, yes.
Briefly, I don't doubt that they've managed to get planning boards or zoning boards to give conditional approvals. For example, it's a classic case with a variance. If you read chapter 48, section 10, nobody can meet those criteria. They're frequently given out, and if the 20-day appeal period goes by, they're home free. But that's why, and it's in pages 12 to 15 of my memo, I wrote the legal authority. It is illegal completely illegal to do that. I don't doubt they've gotten away with it, and if I were their lawyer, I would come in with a straight face, not disclose any of the case law I've put before you, and ask for it with the philosophy there's no harm in asking. And frankly, because I'm a hired advocate, I've done that with variances, okay? Let's not fool around with these technical criteria. You like the applicant, you want his kids to build a house next door, please give us the variance, and everybody in town likes them, so there's no appeal. That doesn't make it legal or even right, frankly. But that's the situation here, and it simply is not legal to do that. And
In the context of the natural heritage,
Okay.
specifically.
At page, look, the key case, look at page 15, okay? Chambers versus Peabody. If I recall that case, and if you want me to give you the whole case, I can, but the citation is there, okay? It's online at masscases.com. I believe there was a change of about 10% in the size or location of the building, and the court said that is a change of substance, okay? And it cannot be delegated. A permit granting authority may not delegate to another board or reserve to itself for future decision the determination of substance. And then in the next paragraph, they talk about the size and location of the building. So lawyers reason by analogy and distinction. And so what I'm saying is, the size, location, configuration of the solar panels, if that changes based on that case by more than 10%, then the permit is invalid completely. You cannot simply make that a condition. And when they talk about coming back, that's exactly what they cannot do. Leave it for future determination. What they're asking is specifically prohibited by the case law I discussed.
Right, but my guess is that if anything were to change as a result, particularly of the natural heritage program, it would, if anything, would shrink the size of this project.
And that's a change of substance.
That's true, but that also would appear to be in your client's interest to have the project shrunk in size.
Zach said at the last meeting, if we get the setback we wanted,
Right.
we all agreed we wanted more of a setback.
Mhm.
He said they would probably pull this project out.
Right.
That's still true.
I said there's a point where the project doesn't work.
I recall it differently.
See, that is irrelevant. It's irrelevant to what the law is. It may go for us, it may go against us. All I'm saying is that either way, we need to know how that story ends before you can grant that permit.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I don't think we're in a position to do that anyway. I'd like to get a motion to continue the hearing.
I just have one question.
Yes, sir.
You pop in here at 6:15, 20 after 6, you drop a 33-page report in front of us, and you say, you guys take a look at this, do you know what's on page 15, 17, 16? I haven't got a clue.
That's another reason to continue. I understand that. I understand
But
you.
that's just from your point. These folks have been coming in here, I don't know how many months trying to get this thing together, and they have been providing to us questions that we've asked. They haven't been providing answers. So I don't like you pushing me around with this thing at 33 pages and saying I haven't got the right or the time to read it.
Well, I'm hoping, sir, that's another reason to continue the hearing. And, I'm sorry I didn't get it here earlier. I just hope you will read it, because of course, as what the law calls quasi-judicial administrative decision makers, what John Adams wrote in the state constitution is that judges, and that includes you all, must be as impartial as the lot of humanity will admit. It's in the Declaration of Rights. And if I've angered you, I hope you will accept my apology, and I hope to heaven you won't hold it against Bernie, okay?
Well, no, anything against Bernie, but you just drop it on us at 6:15 and you expect us to have read it?
No,
And be able to quote from page 15 and 14?
No, absolutely not. That's why I was hoping, that's why section 10 says, I hope you'll continue it. I got it done as soon as I could. And in terms of me quoting from it, I'm just basically trying to point out things that I hope you will look at, but I certainly hope and pray that you would be able to take the time to read it all at your leisure and have time to do it. Thank you.
And arguably too, like, we just got all this stuff tonight too from the solar company, and this is the most thorough answers we've gotten tonight from you all, after asking over a couple meetings, so.
So, but my question though, Stan, this is not, I don't want you to answer this now, but I do want you to think about this, just like you want us to think about it.
Fair enough.
Is that as we go through these, the priority habitats project, obviously something that you folks really need to address. And we are gonna, I think, I would like to give you, the instruction tonight to actually provide the stormwater data and information for us.
And can I ask, what degree of report do you want? There, you could have a 30, 60, 90, 100% split.
Yeah, so you're getting into an area that I'm unfamiliar with. Can you explain this, and maybe I'll ask Mr. Pill for his input.
We'll provide a full report. We'll provide a
Typically
full
on
report.
sites with 15 to 20%, we've done stormwater reports where existing and proposed conditions were essentially the same, slightly higher to proposed on sites with significantly greater slopes than this one.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not expecting you to come back with something that's going to substantially change what, is going on out there right now. But I want to have a report that's thorough enough that we can, satisfy this board as well as, protect yourselves from an appeal.
Absolutely. Yeah, we'll bring that to you, and I'll give that to you well ahead of time. They're typically about 120 pages and full of math.
Well, and we're going to get that right to someone to review, to have it peer reviewed.
Yeah, and if you guys can give us, do you plan to use GBA again, or?
I think we would like to use the folks that the Conservation Commission has used.
The GBA?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we can just send it straight to them.
Because they're familiar with the project and move forward that way.
What about asking them if they think of, ask their opinion on what level of analysis they think would be required? They're familiar with the site, they walked it, they verified the wetlands, they reviewed the plans.
I know.
I know it's probably that.
We can ask them, we can do that, we can ask them and get that back to you. Okay. So, yeah, I think we should continue the hearing. Can I get a motion for that?
Second.
Okay, so, Paul makes the motion and Steph seconds
For, yeah.
for the motion to continue the hearing. So, open for discussion. We're gonna continue the hearing, specifically, if you can acknowledge that you've done what you need to do with the habitat, in terms of submitting the paperwork and necessary, application to them and getting back something from them indicating that they have it and that maybe some idea as to when they'll render an opinion. And then at the same time, the stormwater, information, and we'll get to you, what we feel is, from our peer reviewer, what they consider to be an adequate stormwater analysis.
And can we also include, I don't know what you all think about this, the removal of access road as well in the decommissioning agreement?
Oh, and you discussed, in adding to the decommissioning. So if you do that, we will then, and only then, have the decommissioning report reviewed, peer reviewed after you've added to that for the, thank you for raising that.
Cool. I can send
I
that.
have a question actually. So under what circumstances do you grant waivers for stormwater? I'm just curious. Like what type of site would be suitable for a waiver, in your opinion?
Well, I don't know if we had one. Yeah, we don't. I mean, we don't get a lot of big projects in Hatfield, so, we haven't been asked for a waiver and granted a waiver.
Okay.
So, certainly not since I've been on the board. And, these two folks are relatively new, and Paul, I don't know that we've shared this stage. Okay, thank you,
Thank you all for your time.
okay, thank you,
I'll be in touch.
yes, yeah, I
So
will.
just those two items.
Yeah, we'll get, well, three, the decommissioning,
Yeah.
yeah. We'll get back to you soon on, what level of stormwater management analysis our consultant feels would be necessary.
And is there any of this information you guys don't want? Do you want?
Actually, you know what, unless it would be, I think, better for us right now, how many of these would you give us, just this one, right?
Full size?
The full size.
Yeah, and I've got another.
Yeah, why don't you, we have these copies, and why don't you take the full size one with you? And we'll, hold on to these for our files, but you can take that full size.
Is that the same plans that I already got from Ms. Davis, or is this something new? Because if it's new,
These are the same.
okay, thank you.
Yeah, they were changed since our last meeting to reflect the pulling the,
Right, and they were nice enough to give us a reduced size set that has
right.
the February date on it. Okay,
Pulling them back from the property to the south, and then also, adjusting for the wetland in the middle.
okay.
Yeah.
Part of my trade is being obsessive about details. Thank you.
All right,
Yes, no.
no, why don't we hold on to that? Okay, all right. All right, thank you very much.
Thanks.
Okay.
When's the next?
Actually, it's the third, but we've been asked to maybe have that on April 10th.
At this point, it's the third.
It's third, we'll let you know, right now it's April 3rd, but I need to ask, Paul asked if we could do it on the 10th. So, okay, all right, thank you.
And thank you for putting up with me. I guess being a pain in the whatever is sometimes part of a lawyer's job.
That's the whole lawyer's job.
You know, I have said to folks that I'm proud that my kids have grown up to do honest work. My son's a high school teacher and my daughter is a paramedic with the New York Fire Department.
That's wonderful.
I am very proud of
Kept them out of the legal perspective.
they, seeing what it was like, made that decision very early. Yeah, thank you.
All right, Harry, I'm gonna force you to wait a little longer.
You're just getting older, Eric. You keep sitting here, you're getting older.
I told Corinne I thought we would have her on by 7:30, but that was wishful thinking. All right, come on up, buddy. Okay, so we have,
Sorry to keep you waiting so long.
this is the open space law. We have two bylaws that we have discussed putting before the town at May town meeting. The accessory use bylaw and the, open space development bylaw. Okay, we're on a tight schedule.
I need to get it on.
Town meeting, yeah, it's not only to get it on town meeting, but then also the state requires a certain amount of time between when hearings are posted, because we have to hold a hearing on this, and, actually, if we hold a meeting on April 10th, it actually buys us a little bit of time, but, if we are going to,
Do you want to step away from the door?
yeah.
Clear it out.
Sorry, no.
No one cares.
So right now, in order to meet all of the deadlines, we need to have mailed out tomorrow,
Wow.
a notice of our planning board hearing, mailed to the Department of Housing and Community Development and to the regional planning agency, which is you guys,
Mhm.
and to the planning board of adjacent communities. That needs to go out by, tomorrow, which is fine, Will is totally prepared to do that. He set up this schedule, a week ago. And then, the first notice of the public hearing would be published on March 13th. Second one on March 20th. Then we hold a hearing on April 3rd. If we hold it on April 10th, we actually buy ourselves a little bit of time, but I think we're better off. We do it, and then our May town meeting is May 14th. Anyway, I'd like, if we can, to feel comfortable enough voting tonight to move these forward to a public hearing. On the accessory use bylaw, if you could tell Becky, the one issue that I raised and came up, and Becky raised it, actually with us, was, right now, the way it's written, to conform with the way we have addressed, like someone turning a house into a two-family house, is we've required, 2 parking spots plus a guest parking spot. And what Becky pointed out is that if you do that, you're ending up basically requiring this new unit with the apartment to have 6 parking spots, which is an awful lot of parking spots, and it's not something that we typically, when we, someone.
Or you have the 2 regular and 1 accessory,
Right.
another 2, and then another.
Right, so you end up with 6.
6, yeah.
And so she was suggesting that maybe we just, leave it at, 2 for the main house and a visitor, so 3, and then 1 for the accessory, so you have 4, which actually would comply with our senior, over 55 housing only requires 1 car, even though most couples have 2 cars. Paul, though, wrote and says, the accessory bylaw looks good, but on the parking, I have some thoughts. Leave the parking as it is, as we've made others that have converted to 2-family have 6 spaces. Consider a waiver on a case-by-case basis as applicants come before the board for this type of permit. If one is considering an ADU for a family member, that family member may only have 1 car or no car. On the flip side, they may have 2 cars or more if it's, it's mom and dad. So it's a slippery slope. The board has been pretty consistent in the past. I would prefer that we leave it as it is, and then just do a waiver on a case-by-case basis.
I'll also say that I heard from someone from Community Garden who was watching this, and they're concerned about it just being a giant parking lot in front or just on the side of someone's yard. So they would, which is a good point of having too many, requiring too many parking spaces.
So they would actually prefer that we actually drop it, as opposed to Paul suggesting that we leave it the way it is and we do waivers on a case-by-case basis.
I'm not in favor of the waiver bit, because all of it immediately, first one that comes down the pipe is gonna say, well, you gave it to Stella, how come I don't get it?
Yeah.
I'd rather, if we're gonna condense it to 5 spots, 4 spots, let's do it. The people that were here before us, so be it, that was the law of the land at that point. But the waiver business it's shocking. It's just a way to get everybody mad at the planning board.
Plus, you don't know what kind of volume you're gonna generate of people coming in for waivers.
Right. Corinne, do you have a thought on this? I know this isn't your area.
Yeah. I wish I had spoken more with Becky about this before she went on vacation, but I guess a question that I would have is I'm not a housing planner, so the definition of a 2-family or multifamily versus the definition of an accessory dwelling unit. And I know that there has been previous conversations, because I've been in the room for them, about the sizing of an accessory dwelling unit. I don't know if size comes into play at all with sort of full-fledged, I guess, the other family of a second family or multifamily. Yeah, how many bedrooms exactly? Is if the accessory dwelling unit is only sized to really ever be a 1 bedroom, then I mean, it sounds to me, and I know Becky agrees, and she says this before, that, and we agree with the person that you were talking to at the community gardens, that it seems to be an inordinate amount of parking required. And so in terms of it complying with your existing, what's on the books existing for multifamily or 2-family, I don't know how you would need to align those two, but it would seem to me that accessory dwelling units are for smaller, they're not for full families. Right. They're for 1 other person or 2 other people, it would seem like. So I don't have any guidance on that, but.
Well, so what I found sort of interesting, when I, after our last meeting, and I went back and reread this, particularly after Becky sent the updated version, I started thinking that, okay, someone has a single family home, for which we don't require them to have any parking.
Mm-hmm.
Right. We don't require any parking for a single family home. And they come in with an ADU, and now all of a sudden they need to provide 6 parking spots. Where before we never asked them for anything. They may have had a 2-car garage, they may have had a 6-car garage, but we don't say that you can't have a 6-car garage, we don't say that you have to have a 2-car garage. Mm-hmm. And so I'm feeling like it does create a burden on someone who otherwise just wants to put in this accessory apartment for an in-law or a mom or dad or for a child or something like that, that now all of a sudden they've got to provide for 6 parking spots.
And the one thing that I would say that I have been thinking about when I have heard you talking about this with Becky, and then in the office a little bit, is that I don't know what Hatfield's on-street parking regulations may or may not be, but the requirement at that point, if you're requiring 3 for an ADU, 3 for the original house, the 2 guest spaces, those are only ever going to be temporarily filled anyway. And so, it might be a matter of hours that somebody would be parked on the street if they're allowed to, if that space isn't provided for. It might be a matter of days if they're staying overnight, but how much of a nuisance would that create? That seems to me that that's one of the hinging questions here. And if it's not something that the town is expressly concerned about, that there's going to be this, every house is going to have an ADU and they're all going to have 2 guests at a time, I think, to me, I'm always concerned about stormwater, yeah, exactly. But 2 extra parking spaces is 2 extra parking spaces, and most often those are paved. And you're an MS4 community, so that's what I think about.
Thinking about it, 4 seems like it would be a fair treatment. Mm-hmm. If you had 2 and 1 more, and you added the accessory dwelling unit, then you would at least have 2 and 2. It would pretty much cover it unless there were guests, Mm-hmm. But maybe 4 is the key number. I don't know.
I think that, and I probably do have, I spent so much time today on yours that I don't. Does someone have that, the house that, I don't know, you have
I've
it?
looked in the last,
I've got
the
it.
update since the last
Not
meeting.
stapled together, but I've got it.
No, that's the open space one. You have the ADU one?
Yeah, from the last meeting.
Yeah. Yeah, okay, so right now, it reads, is what I'd like you to do, Karina, is to have this go back to her.
Sure.
So right now, it says in accordance with section 5.7 in town, at least 2 off-street parking spaces per dwelling and 1 space for guests are available for use by the owner occupant. Parking spaces shall be located to the side of the rear of the structure to the maximum extent possible. What if we just change that to just say, in accordance with, so it goes back to section 5.7. And zoning bylaw. off-street parking, 5.7. So parking shall be, shall prevent the collective provision of off-street parking facilities for two or more buildings provided, okay. That's for off-street, okay, for dwelling units, including apartments and condominiums, 2 parking spaces for each family unit, plus a common parking area for guests.
So that's around number 6.
That's
That
how,
gives you the 6.
that gives you the 6.
So that big circle.
Well, that's what Paul is suggesting, is that we're sort of stuck with that,
That makes sense here. I mean, to me, hearing that, because it calls out apartments.
right?
Yeah.
So I think can you just let her know that we're going to, I think we need to stick with the way that I is currently written,
Mm-hmm.
because we'd otherwise have to change that.
Yeah, we want the Pandora's box of waivers. I know, we can open that up.
I mean, if someone wants less, I would say yes, we should allow that, but.
So I guess we'll have to see when that comes up. Okay, all right.
So, so what I'm bringing back to Becky is that if you feel like you need to stick with the parking as currently written as per section 5.7 of the zoning, but to allow provision for a waiver. Have you not decided on that?
Well, any item can be waived, right? I mean, people can come in and ask for a waiver.
Does it, is that expressly stated?
I don't think so. I don't think it's expressly stated.
Not in your bylaw.
Exactly, right, bylaw.
That would be something I would want to look into because I know that we've had, I don't remember any definitive conclusion, but we've had conversations around that in the past in the office of, in the open space development, for example, I've put a clause in there that allows for the granting of a waiver, just to make sure that that was possible. So I don't personally know legally what's allowed if
So
it's
what you're
not
saying is
provided
if
for.
we're gonna even put our toe in the water on a waiver, you've gotta put somewhere that it's available.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it doesn't mean you have to grant it, but it's that the applicant, I think the way that I phrased it in the open space development bylaw is that the applicant has the right to apply for the waiver and the planning board may grant a waiver, provided for
Right.
the fact that the applicant can show that there's no, detriment.
That's good.
And that can then just be covered, because that can be covered in this section alone or for the entire section?
You mean in the accessory, it can be
Yeah.
provided for an accessory dwelling?
Yeah,
I think that in the parking, so is the way that it's written right now in Becky's draft is parking is its own section of this bylaw?
It's I under,
Okay.
under 1.3.
I would think it would want to be either in I or, immediately following I, so II or however it's numbered.
Yeah.
I would think that that would be allowable, even though there's no waiver provided for in 5.7 itself.
Right.
But this is, something that I would talk about at the office and make sure that we're all in
Yeah.
agreement about that.
Okay,
Okay.
so if you could, with that, so we're really not changing the way it's written right now,
Mhm.
but then we're looking into whether or not that can be added.
Yeah.
Or how the waiver is added.
Yeah.
So otherwise, this bylaw would be the way we reviewed it and looked at it last time.
Okay.
Okay, so can I get a motion to, advance the Hatfield accessory apartment bylaw to, a public hearing to be held on either April 3rd or 10th, and call what we decide? I get a motion to that effect.
I'll make the motion.
Okay,
I'll second.
okay, any discussion then? If we can bring this to the hearing and then eventually go down the town hall. Yeah,
And the only thing that could change is that way.
yeah, we got waiver language, yeah,
Okay.
subject to that change. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, any opposed? Measure passes. Okay, so Becky has, Corinne has put together, the open space development bylaw, and, she and I have talked, extensively since our last meeting. The draft that you have here reflects both the discussion that we had at our last meeting and a couple things that I caught, that we talked about, we talked over the phone about. So one, Corinne, do you have your copy there?
I actually don't. I was out of the office all day and I didn't think about printing it yesterday.
Can I give
But-
you one, or you just?
Sure.
Yeah,
I think I would be able to, if you have an extra copy, I would take it, but I think that I can speak
I
from,
don't have my.
okay, all
Okay.
right.
yeah,
All right.
see.
So, just a really, little thing
Yeah.
under the definitions,
Okay,
the 6.23.
Yep.
You just need to move the agricultural soils up to alpha
okay.
location, because it used to say prime
Right,
agriculture.
right,
Yeah,
okay.
so it's where the P
Yeah.
would have been. Under, prohibited uses in the open space
Uh-huh,
of an OSD, I think it would behoove us to put, I would like us to add that a prohibited use in this common or in this open space, because again, it's gonna be in conjunction with housing, is, cannabis cultivation, either indoor or.
I think that's a good idea.
all right.
Because right now,
What
we
if the
don't,
people in the development want it, no?
well, they can grow their 6 plants and they can all do it, but I'm talking about,
Commercial,
yeah,
okay.
yeah, commercial, cultivation. And the reason I raise that is because right now, we very specifically say that agriculture is allowed in the open space.
Mm-hmm,
Right now, cannabis is not by state law considered an agricultural use, but I already am hearing people wanting to get that changed.
okay.
And so if that gets changed, then that would,
What about hemp?
I think if we keep it to commercial, we could say commercial, recreational cannabis cultivation.
Isn't there a, not concern, but isn't there an issue with the growing season and the amount of time it takes for cannabis to grow to maturity
No.
outside?
We can grow it outside.
Yeah.
Starting in greenhouse.
Yeah.
All right.
So I mean,
Okay.
are people okay with that? I'm just thinking that because we're gonna have this protected farmland that's gonna be in conjunction with houses, so it can be really close to houses. So we have the issue of trespass, maybe smell, a whole host of other things. I'm just thinking that that would be one place where, we wouldn't allow commercial
I
cultivation.
don't think I need commercial cultivation within housing development,
I think that's a great point.
And I'm just concerned because because it may change, and then someone could say, well, agriculture is allowed, and this is now agriculture.
So are you saying that it will include hemp drying, since there's a little difference between that and?
Yeah, so I guess what we wanna say is, does hemp fall under the name cannabis, or is it, because I know hemp is.
I know that those laws are coming down sooner than that changing
right.
cannabis to agriculture use probably is that allow hemp for.
Well, if they allow hemp as an agricultural use, then it doesn't matter, because it would be
Okay.
all under.
Yeah, but well,
Okay,
all
sure,
of it, yeah.
I just don't want
Yeah,
us to like have to box this
Right,
into something,
right.
yeah.
Okay, so I would add that one.
Okay,
Right underneath that is 6, special land features. The planning board may request an applicant to use an OSD subdivision design if the property possesses one or more of the following special features, and then it goes through a bunch of features. But aren't we requiring everybody to use an OSD design? That seems like it's there because.
yeah, so I am a fan of redundancy,
Mhm.
and there's the provision for a waiver in this draft. So a waiver if the trigger is if you're developing if you're subdividing 3 or more lots or developing 3 or more units.
So this one is a smaller one.
Yes, if it's a smaller one and you still would like to see open space, and then also if a developer or applicant would say, I want to do 5 units and I don't think it should be open space, it's just another reason or another way for you to be able to go back and say, well, you have these features here, like X number of these X features. So that's why we're going to require you actually to follow through with open space.
Okay. In 6.26 subdivision approval procedures, we just need to add in, which we did in previous places, the agricultural advisory.
Okay.
Committee.
Yeah, I thought I
Go in there.
Okay.
Okay, the frontage of the parcel from which the lots of an open space development are created shall equal or exceed 60 feet for each lot created in the open space development. So does that mean that if the frontage is only 240 feet, then you can only get 4 lots in the back?
Yes.
Okay. So that means that, so the frontage out on the main road is not just the frontage out on the main road determines how many houses you can get in the back.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, so in the Anna Holhut thing,
Yeah, I'm just thinking of that.
she's got 4 acres in the back, but she's only got 70 feet out in front.
Mhm.
Right now, under our current subdivision, she could put in a road because she's got the 50 feet to put in the road and then put houses out in the back.
Mhm.
That becomes.
Under an open space development plan.
It's existing right of ways, right? It's not the, the
Yeah, well,
subdivision
we're
right of
saying
ways.
that under the open space development plan, which is what we want to have be the de facto,
Mhm.
she would get no houses at all on that board.
So I think that's something we keep coming back to with, I think you're bringing up good points that I have taken for granted, with the fact that as we have talked about over the process of looking at this bylaw, there's numbers in there that I couldn't come to on my own for understanding why they existed, but I assumed, and it was either before.
Oh, so
it was,
this is from our original?
Yes, that was from the original, and I left it in because in the beginning, I guess I made an assumption that it was there for a reason, and then my continued work on this, I have sort of taken it for granted and stopped questioning that, I guess. But that's the same conversation that we had on the phone the other day where we were talking about the average lot size and how it's actually a detriment to have. And so I would say the same, I would say I can't see a advantage to having that. I would say the same thing for frontage on existing right-of-way as opposed to any subdivision road.
Right.
And the best practice, as I highlighted in that original packet I gave everybody, is to actually have no dimensional controls at all, because that allows for the unless you're specifically controlling for Title V, because that allows for the most creative design. And I think that the what we have now in this draft is a very good reconciliation of the desire to have it spelled out that we're controlling for Title V, have some sort of level of comfort with Hatfield's underlying zoning, while also still allowing for creative design and development. So what I would say right now is that for the same reason that I recommended doing away with average lot size, I don't think that it would be a problem. I can't see a reason to keep the 60-foot frontage. Yes.
Yeah, it seems to me like if we want this to be the de facto way that any developments occur in the future that are over 3 units, that we have to get rid of this, because otherwise
it's a disadvantage.
We're severely disadvantaging people who could, under the old subdivision regs, Anna Holhut, for example, could put in a 50, a road through here, and then build all over this.
Yeah, but she's gonna box herself up for this.
Yeah,
I don't want to.
Well, just using this as just using this as a hypothetical. If somebody only has 70 feet.
Right.
And they want to, which is enough to put in a 50-foot road, and they want to go back and develop the back property and have that become a town road, this would not allow them to do that at all.
That's right.
And so I think we need to adjust this and make this so that, and just as you're saying, we are allowing, and in fact, your number 2 talks about that in the interest of flexibility and provided that all other requirements are met, there shall be no frontage required for individual lots on each subdivision streets. But anyway, so I think we need to
Yeah.
fix this.
So, and the other thing that I would add to that is that there is, which was a carryover from the original version as well, the requirement that if any of the open space lots are going to be developed against an existing right-of-way, that they have the 200-foot frontage requirement that's in the underlying zoning.
Right,
So that sort of provides for any aesthetic,
right,
you know,
right.
concern that the town might have.
And I think
That makes sense.
that makes sense.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Because then it'll be like the property, well, except if you're on Elm Street, you'll actually have more frontage
That's how
there.
you like
Yeah, because some of these,
Right.
okay,
So I'm taking out the 60-foot frontage.
Right.
Okay.
yes. And then, I noticed, well, it probably doesn't matter because you're taking it out, because you have, in the next one, you have the exception is described in 6.25.3. Can you just look at, your 6.2.8? Number 2, and then number 2 under that.
The total number of building lots.
Yeah, you make a reference there to a 6.2.5.3, and I think that might be wrong. You just want to make sure that.
Okay. Is it highlighted right now?
It's, yeah,
Okay. Yeah. Right. Those I should have said this in the email. The references might not be correct, and I've
Yeah.
highlighted all of them so that
Okay.
at the final version, I'll go back and make sure everything is
okay.
Yeah.
All right, then, in increases in permissible density, this is 6.2.9. Are you there? 6.2.9 is,
6.2.9,
yeah, so you got
6.2.1, 6. Protection, requirements.
yeah, no, keep going, I think. Oh, no, wait a second, it's before that, I'm sorry.
I'll number the pages next time too.
Yeah. This is the one that you just sent.
The previous version, it was written into the back. It was not. I hadn't moved it up to where it should go in the bylaws. Yeah, it was optional section all the way to the last
so
page.
maybe
So if you're
it's
looking at
all
the
way
previous,
back.
I just found that too, yep. It's after the chart.
yes.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay, so this is the, okay, here you go, your fault. So this is,
This is what we have to decide, basically,
yeah,
talk about.
yeah, so this is the new one. Do you have a new one?
I don't.
You don't, okay, all right, so, right now, in the older version, you got a 10%, if 10% more of the site was, placed in the open space, you got a 5%, bonus in the face of maximum number of the lots allowed. Okay. I proposed to Corinne, and she's written into the new version, that for each additional 10% of the site comprised entirely of agricultural soils set aside as open space. So those agricultural soils are prime, statewide, or local, that we can grant an additional 10% of, a bonus of 10% of the maximum number. So that if it's forest land or just natural area or whatever, you get, if you're gonna add 10% to the, protected open space, you get a 5% bonus.
Like up the Billy's up on the mountain.
Right, right.
Okay.
But if it's agricultural land and you add another 10%, you
Okay.
can get a 10% bonus.
Okay.
Because we've heard a lot over the last month and a half of the desire to protect agricultural land.
Right, yeah, right.
So that's why I suggested that.
Okay.
Okay. On the moderate and low income housing, originally it was, you got 1 unit, additional unit for a moderate income household, and you got 2 units if it was a low income.
Mhm.
And what I suggested is that we just change it to one dwelling unit for every one unit. You get one additional dwelling unit for every one unit of of moderate or low income housing. So you
get one for one.
you get one for one.
As
So,
long as they can be counted towards the
as long as they
affordable
can be
housing.
counted towards our state, requirement for low income housing. So it's a one for one, so you don't
Yeah.
separate them out.
Right. That's right.
Right. Then on the other thing, for every, under C, for every historical structure certified as such by Hatfield Historical Commission, which is the way you refer to it, you have it as historic here.
Oh, okay.
Just add
Oh,
an AL.
yeah.
And then, subject to a historic preservation restriction approved by the Mass Historical Commission. They don't hold the easements. They just approve it.
So what did I
You
write?
have to add in the word approved.
Oh, okay.
Approved by the Massachusetts Historical Commission. And then the other thing that I want, actually, you guys don't have the new version. So Corinne and I talked about this. Right now, the minimum lot area in the open space development under rural residential would go down to 22,500, so that's a half acre. Under outlying residential, it would go down to 30,000, which is half of what it is now, 60,000. In ag, it would go from 60,000 to 30,000.
Mhm.
That's that chart.
That's in the chart. Yeah. In town center, it goes down to 22,500, which is a half an acre.
So that's increasing density.
Yes, it's increasing density and it's getting lots down to half acre. I remember from my master plan committee work, we had proposed then to reduce the size of house lots in town center because it's all sewer.
Yeah.
And we got beat up pretty badly. Despite the fact that there's a lot of half acre and smaller lots.
When was this?
This was 20, almost 20 years ago. But we got beat up pretty badly. And our town center zone is fairly small.
Yeah.
It's not very big. All of the farmland behind, across the street and heading south, behind all of the houses along Main Street are actually in our ag zone. But very little of that is developable because it doesn't have road frontage or road access. I went on our maps, and there's very little large areas of developable land in town center.
Very little.
In town center.
In town center.
Close to none. Yeah, right.
And so Corinne and I went back and forth on the phone, and we just decided, Corinne, basically being persuaded by me with the information I just gave you, that maybe we just drop town center from this open space development requirement. That it's de facto everywhere else in town.
Yeah.
In the rural residential outlying and ag, but in town center, we basically rely on our subdivision rights, on our current subdivision rights.
Not these ones that we're gonna
Yeah,
have, but
yeah. In other words, someone could still do an open space development if they wish.
We can make it by right as
We can
opposed to
make
de
it by
facto.
right as opposed to de facto.
And the one question that I would have, if that is the direction that you choose to go, where it's still allowed in town center as opposed to not allowed at all, or allowed by special permit, would be, what would the reduction in lot size then look like? Would you still be interested in keeping it above a half acre, or would you want to allow it at half acre but by right, so it wouldn't necessarily be the only way that town center would be developed, but it would still be, would be allowable?
Well, I think, as you said, if you don't go to a half acre, then you're not getting the same number of units that you would have previously.
Yeah, it wouldn't be
There'd be no
incentivized.
advantageous-
Yeah.
It wouldn't be advantageous for the individual to do it that way. I mean, we can leave it this way. I'm just concerned that we could have this. I would hate to see this bylaw tossed out at town meeting because someone says, we don't want small lots in town center. Whereas that's gonna be a very narrow part of
The whole.
the whole.
Yeah, right, right.
And we lose the rest of it.
Yeah.
Well, can you just increase the lot size then for that and still keep this?
If you, see, the issue is if you require
Oh,
this, then as the only way that you can develop going forward, which is what we're really proposing here, you want to be able to allow the individual to get the same number of lots that they otherwise would have, same number of units that they would have gotten previously, now they're just on smaller lots. I mean, we could leave it under town,
Yeah.
we could leave town center in it, it's not gonna affect.
I mean, then I could see someone also saying like, oh,
Is there
who's
someone?
the
who's gonna
owner,
pick that
or
up?
what town landowner in town center twisted your arm to get this
Right.
special thing
Right,
done?
because there are so few lots,
Yeah, who's gonna pick it up? You think there will be somebody that will pick it up in a town meeting situation that would notice that it is or it isn't?
Somebody watching this.
Yeah,
Well, Harrison's here.
Harrison's on the other side of the road.
I don't know, maybe we should just leave it, because you're right, it's not gonna affect many properties.
And there is, if, you can keep the provision for a waiver in there, and so if,
That's true. Or put the waiver for town center or something?
No, I think the waiver is
It's for
there.
all in
it's
general?
for all in general.
there may be an occasion where the planning board decides with a developer that the town wouldn't be served by open space development in some section of town. I can't foresee why that would be, but I think you'd want to keep that open for any district.
Right.
So if, just talking this through so I understand your thinking, if you decide to leave town center in as either de facto, I think, or by right, I think the question is the same, and you decide to have the minimum lot size go down to a half acre, the half acre works for the reason that having the requirements works in all the other districts. The concern is still that someone during the public hearing process could take issue with that and derail the passing of the whole bylaw, revision of the whole bylaw due to that. The only solution being that if we didn't take it down to a half acre and we kept it at I forget what it is currently, 30,000 maybe in that.
45.
As the minimum in open space development. So if you kept it at an acre, a little over an acre, then nobody would ever want to develop in town center because they don't get the same density that they would get with regular subdivision, and they're being made to do it in open space development. You could, so in your opinion, what would be the detriment of taking town center out of the open space development bylaw altogether? And if there's so few lots that can be developed, is there a reason not to just do it with a traditional subdivision process?
Well, there aren't that many properties that would be affected, but I think, Steph, a good point that it does seem as if we're singling out then maybe just a few landowners.
And allowing them
Right,
to, okay.
And we could grant, there could be cases where we do want it to be in the old traditional, in the former way, and just do a waiver.
I guess the point or the conclusion that I'm coming to in thinking through all of this is that it would make, I see the value in taking town center out entirely of this bylaw, mentioning it. I see the value in keeping it as in the current draft de facto. I think that if we make it by right, whether or not we reduce the minimum lot size to half an acre or keep it at about an acre, there wouldn't necessarily be much incentive to do open space development in town center either way. So I don't know what the point of allowing it to be by right would be.
Right.
It sort of seems like it would just be hanging there in the bylaw. Nobody ever uses that.
So that's an argument for leaving it in and having it be
De facto.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Your option.
Yeah.
I do see the problem of public perception, and as you mentioned, that the master planning process was 20 years ago. It
Right.
sounds like
Right.
so maybe that wouldn't come up at this meeting or these hearings, but
Yeah, I feel like there's been a shift away in the last few decades towards small lot sizes in general.
right. Being wary of how few hours are left on this project, as I've told you before, I'm just wondering if it would be helpful for, any presentation at the hearing or something like that to sort of highlight how much the visual impact of the town center, and this is something I don't know off the top of my head, I haven't looked at this, but how much of town center is actually half-acre lots or less, as you've mentioned, and how they contribute to the visual character of the town center. And it might be, a matter of perception where residents don't realize that they're not thinking about it in that way. Or it might be that they know and they don't like the way that part of town center looks,
Well, it could be easy enough to do that. I mean, there's quite a few lots, even on Main Street, that are smaller than an acre, just they built years and
Yeah.
years ago. So, yeah. Why don't we leave it in for now?
Okay.
As the fact.
Okay.
So by voting to move this to the hearing, I'm not necessarily asking you to say that you agree with that you want to go this way. It's just to get it to the hearing.
Right.
And then we'll have the hearing, we have to vote at the hearing then to move it to town meeting.
Mm-hmm.
So,
And honestly, I have to read it.
yeah. So with that in mind, can I get a motion to move the revised and subject to the revisions that we just talked about tonight, the 6.2 open space development to a public hearing to be held either April 3rd or April 10th?
I will make that motion.
Okay. I'll second it. Okay. Any discussion?
Now, is there any miscue if we get it on the 10th instead of the 3rd?
No, because I think if we go on the 10th, the date of the planning board hearing must be within 65 days of date number 2, which is date number, let's see.
Is date number 2 the second notice?
Find out that you're short by 2 days.
Right. Is date number 2 the second notice?
Yeah, date of the planning board must be within 65 days of date number 2 of, if applicable, data was proposed for submitting the board selectmen. Not applicable. So, no, because that's not applicable, because that's if this for the selectmen, select proposed amendments to the planning board.
Oh, okay.
So.
We're okay.
So I think we're okay. All right.
Yeah, either one.
Yeah, so, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. Okay.
Okay, great.
So you'll work on those, and
Yep.
everyone, please read the latest version that we just got from Corinne.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think Becky comes back at the end of this week, so I'll get her that note. And if she has any questions, she'll be in touch, but I'm sure it'll be an easy fix.
Okay. Great, thank you.
Yeah,
All right.
thank you.
And before we have Harry come up, there are,
Harry's growing old back there.
The state has been in touch with us, and there's some requirements for us to amend our bylaws regarding the flood hazard management program because it's been updated. And it's essentially, this is housekeeping, but there are a few things where we need to increase our elevation data and things like that, so that we're in compliance with the state, the new state law. And, so we would have to do it again at this town meeting. And so they have provided us with language, that we would otherwise use, that would correct, our current bylaw, to be in conformance with the, state requirements for, the floodplain district as it relates to the flood insurance maps.
And that would just have to be adopted.
Yeah, this would have to be adopted. This is really just a housekeeping matter. So I'd like to, also then put on the hearing docket for, again, April 3rd or April 10th, these, housekeeping items that we have been recommended by the state to, get our floodplain district, up to, in accordance with the current, current requirements at the state level.
Right.
Can I get a motion for that?
So moved.
Okay, second?
Second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thanks. I will get with Wilma tomorrow to handle all of this.
Can I just ask a question about agenda?
Yeah,
So on our next meeting, whichever date it is, are we expecting solar back that day or no?
I don't know if they'll be back. I don't know if they'll have their stormwater stuff done by then.
But the hearings that we just voted for these new,
Yeah,
that's gonna be a different date,
Right.
or it's gonna be,
it'll be the same day.
it'll be the same day, okay,
And we'll hold these first.
okay.
Yeah. Okay, all right, I am well, there's nothing that needs to be signed that I know of, so we're good. I'm out of town for the upcoming week, but, so Harry, sorry. All right, okay, Harry, sorry.
I'll make this short as possible.
Hey, Harry, no. See you later.
So I have some questions on my business and the future of it, my father's property.
Relative to what? Okay,
I know you said you're making it short.
yeah.
So there's a small building towards the north of our property, and you can see right here, which is gutted apartments.
Yep.
Which I would like to eventually turn into a small farm store. Basically, essentially taking my current farm stand and turning it into an indoor space.
You mean where the Gardens used to live?
Yeah.
That's attached, right?
Correct.
Yeah, you see a bunch of it's like storage right now.
Yeah, so right now it's currently,
Installation or something?
yeah, right now it's currently gutted, and it has storage in it. So before I even propose this to my father and doing, I want to get as much information on my end as what I can do, for any further questions he may have. So from who I've talked to, the health inspector and the building inspector, they're both on board with this. But they said I could come to you guys to confirm what I can do with this part of the building, if it's even possible, with the current zoning laws.
What do you want to do?
I want to essentially take the farm stand that you see out front and put it indoors with a manned cash register. And then eventually add in some value-added and perishable products, so some coolers.
Now, who owns the property at the present time?
My father.
So it would be a year-round thing?
No. To start, it would probably be seasonal. So what I'm currently doing, maybe a few months longer. Or year-round is kind of in the future. It's
You
kind of
wouldn't want to use the other buildings on the side?
the garage.
Yeah.
No.
Okay.
So really, though, your father would have to come and apply for this,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
I mean, in the whole deal, if he's the deeded owner, he would have to come and apply for anything that you want to get
Yeah.
done. Okay, all right, okay, as long as we know what we're talking about.
Yeah, he's the owner. I guess you could call him the leaser.
Okay, so I think
What do you think, the
we can
leaser
make
or
this.
the leaser?
We can make this fairly short. So a farm stand is allowed by right in any of our zoning districts. You're gonna wanna get a copy of, look at chapter 40A, section 3. And I'll just read it. So, no zoning ordinance bylaw shall regulate or restrict the use of or require a special permit for the use, expansion, reconstruction, or construction of structures thereon for the primary purpose of commercial agriculture, blah, 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 including those facilities for the sale of produce, wine, dairy products, provided that either during the months of June, July, August, and September of each year, or during the harvest season of the primary crop raised, 25% of such products for sale based on either gross sales or volume have been produced by the owner or lessee of the land on which the facility is located. Okay. So you have to, 25% of it has to come from you. Or at least 25% of such products for sale has been produced by the owner on land on which the facility is located. And at least an additional 50% of such products for sale have been produced in Massachusetts. Okay. So that's the definition of a farm stand. Mm-hmm. So if, we walk in there in 3 or 4 years and you're selling, little trinkets made by somebody upstate New York,
Yeah, I mean, to give you an overview of what I want to do, I kind of have like a 4 or 5 year plan of what I'd like to see this in the end, but we want to start with basically taking the farm stand where it is and putting it inside. So taking the vegetables and fruits I'm selling and putting them into an indoor space. Climate controlled and pet controlled. Our second year, kind of first year now, we want to incorporate other value-added products from the local farms in the area. So you're talking like milk, cheese, eggs, that kind of thing. Maybe
well, again, if you can stick with that 50% of it coming from Massachusetts.
100% of it will be from Massachusetts, to be honest with you.
Because otherwise it becomes a store.
There you go. Then you got your problem. Then you got your other 50%.
Yeah.
That's like
25% from you.
Okay.
And 50% of it,
Does that include the 25%?
no, I think that's in addition to. So you want to read it. You want to have that.
What is that?
And no, it's not in the,
48, or is it, or kind of,
Just if you Google Massachusetts, MGL,
yeah,
chapter 40A, section 3, this will come up.
okay.
And you're going to want to read through this, and you're going to obviously want your mom and your dad to look at it too, but because this will protect them legally as well.
Yeah, do I need any permits to do this besides like a building permit to?
Well, anything you do in there, you're going to need a building permit for.
But I don't need to do any special zoning.
No, as long as it meets those requirements, it's a farm stand, which is by right in all of our zones.
Okay. Are there any parking issues?
So the issue is, what kind of parking are you thinking? Right now, we allow farm stands, just have people pull up and they run in and stuff. Are you gonna have off-street parking, or are you gonna?
Currently, I was gonna go with the on-street parking, and
people are just gonna run across the lawn?
Looking at the access of what I'm currently doing and the amount of traffic I produce, I don't see it expanding that much to, become a hazard in the road. And I also think the shoulders of the road are wide enough to handle that kind of, the car traffic. And, you're talking maybe up to 10 cars an hour, a little more on a busier day.
Oh, come on, there's more than 10 guys an hour.
I don't monitor it, but I kind of look at other situations that happen in town. You look at the sporting events where Main Street is filled with cars for 3-4 hours at a whack. You look at other events, the Harvest Fest or something, or this would be small
The
scale.
Polish club.
Yeah, Polish club.
does that mean that so let's say he was able to put a sign, how does that then all work if he wants to put a sign out, or?
Yeah.
That's the building inspector. Once
That
you
would
get
be,
into that, that's the building.
we don't have to do anything with that.
Yeah,
And same with if you wanted to put in change door, entryway or change that building in any sort of way.
Yeah.
well, that would be
That's
building
building
inspector.
inspector. Yeah, okay.
That would be building inspector.
Okay.
So if you get to the point where parking is an issue,
Mhm.
then you're probably gonna wanna move to another place.
Yeah, this is,
What do you got for square footage in that little park?
this is 400 square foot. It's 391, so, we're just under 400 square foot.
So you could grow out of that relatively quickly.
Exactly, and so I'm kind of looking at it as like a stepping stone, to see where a retail business in my farm goes, especially in this town with the traffic we have in the community.
But the farm stand business is pretty good in Hatfield.
It's,
I mean, there's enough farm stands to go around,
the big thing I see with my personal business is this is my main avenue for income. A roadside farm stand isn't adequate because of the amount of produce that gets thrown away and wasted on a daily basis just because certain things need to be kept in a controlled environment which aren't. And theft is another bigger issue that I deal with. So there are issues that deal with me.
You might have to do some issues on electrical in there. If you're gonna be, putting in those kind of coolers that are gonna be in there.
Yeah.
They're gonna take up some juice where in that old part of that house, you may have to do some of that too.
Yeah, we have a pretty good beefed up electrical system
Oh, you do?
on our property.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, for my dad's business and whatnot. So my other question, which might have already been answered, I want to utilize this space for my CSA pickup this year, which essentially would be kind of clean out the space, make it safe to walk through, and be able to set up a couple tables and to have people pick up produce, walk in, walk out, leave.
That's all part of your farm.
Yeah,
That's just that's a natural extension of your farm operation.
and that's what I was told.
Yeah.
But I wanted to get clarification.
Yeah. So I would definitely go to that chapter 40A
Okay.
and read through that section, and that's basically the definition of a farm stand.
Okay.
And I would look too, there's other, talk to other farm store owners that exist now in the valley that have done the similar.
I mean, most of them started in the space that you're starting in.
Yeah.
Even Maple Valley, you started in hardly nothing, and then all of a sudden you're boom, boom.
Actually, just met with him today. Yeah.
Flew into a,
I'm thinking Atlas and the other one in Amherst, that just
Yeah.
store, and Red Fire Farm also has something like that.
Oh, good. Cool. All right.
Yeah, we don't want like a Chip Hager's farm stand.
Yeah, right,
It's not a
yeah.
farm stand anymore.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, he said he's not putting kitchen in there
Yeah,
either.
he's got,
Yeah.
he's got.
And that's, our original design was like maybe a kitchen to do baked goods, this and that, and we realized it would be too much and wouldn't, fit into the space and the feasibility of it.
Well, and then you're gonna need to check into the Board of Health, because then you're gonna need, because it's commercial.
Facilities,
Commercial kitchen.
you're entering into a whole different world.
Yeah.
You get out of farm stand.
Yeah. Now with and you guys might not know this, but ice cream, could that fall under the same category if it was a local product sourced from Massachusetts?
Just local ones.
Yeah, as long as it's local.
Is it, so let me clarify, is it products for consumption or is it products in general from Massachusetts? Or I can read
And then
up on it.
if you do ice cream retail like that, you're probably gonna be getting involved with sales tax and stuff too.
Mhm.
It's products for sale. So what we don't want it to become like a craft store.
And that's not my intent.
Yeah, and and so it's products for sale that are primarily farm products, they're ag products.
Yeah, and it's just a question of you guys, and my main goal is to be able to feed the community and the local towns, and that's the produce.
I hope you got that on tape, John. My main goal is to feed the community. Good Lord.
Yeah, like you bought Daryl's milk and made ice cream out of it.
Yeah.
That cover.
Yeah, which is
Or if you went with Maple Line or someone like that.
Yeah.
That's local,
wonderful.
Oh,
Yeah.
Sounds like a cool idea.
Cool.
Okay,
Well, thank you.
all right, Harry.
Those are the things.
Okay, April 3rd or April 10th, do people have a preference?
April 3rd.
I got my work trip down, so I can be here April 3rd.
April 11th.
You did? Okay,
But I can make either work.
I'm gonna be out on the 3rd.
you are.
I have a chance to be out of town on a job too, and
All right, well, Paul Dostal will definitely not be here on the 3rd.
Well, then let's go to the 11th, so what the heck these guys are all about.
April 10th.
10,
Okay, so the next meeting will be April 10th.
Okay.
I will let Wilma know, I'll give her these, items that we did, Can I ask somebody, to contact well, first of all, to find out exactly who it was with the Conservation Commission who did the work on the solar
I can
project,
look into that.
DSX or whatever it is?
Yeah, Harrison knows, yeah.
Okay, if you could find out and then get in touch with them to find out what they would consider to be
Appropriate
an appropriate
stormwater.
stormwater management analysis.
And it's like a percentage of whatever the NRCC.
No, the
That's
NRCC
different, sorry.
is the rain data, that they would use. No, there was they were talking about, and they probably, hopefully would know.
I just didn't, yeah.
Yeah, just say, look, we need to know to what level of detail
Yep.
we need a stormwater management. And then if you could let Wilma know what that answer is, to get back to Zach.
Yep.
That'd be wonderful, thank you.
This doesn't seem to work.
No, the only way she could do it, I think, is if so this is a good reason for the open space development, because she could come in here with a road, right?
Which is what she was asking.
If she comes in here with a road and gets 200 feet of frontage for this house off of this road, that's the only way she can do it. But to subdivide this,
It can't happen.
it can't from this. No, she's gotta get it off of the subdivision.
And if you get it here, you gotta make a cul-de-sac. You got to,
Right,
okay? So to get the money, to come up with 100 and some odd, or $250 a running foot, to get in here, there's only one lot in the end. There's this and there's this. That's it.
you don't think there's a second lot in there?
No, not enough room. You haven't got the room. That's why I wanted, to do it.
Right.
You show me that you can put the size in there,
Yeah,
then I agree.
Right.
But I don't see any size. The
Right.
size is gonna be the restriction,
Right.
not the acre.
right, but yeah, so we were right in telling her that she can't just carve this off.
Oh, no way in hell that she thought she could just
The
carve it
only
off.
way that she can do that is if she gets 200 feet off of her new road.
Right.
Yeah.
Then she's gotta get 200 feet for the next one.
one, yeah, right.
So it's a,
Yeah,
well, you guys are gonna fight that one. I'll be gone by then.
okay, can I get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
That's.
Oh,
And I'll
this is a
second
long-
that.